and remotely through Microsoft Teams. The meeting will be conducted in English today as there are no translation services available. Please ensure your microphones are muted, and now I will ask Councillor Duncan McInnes to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Oh, Heavenly Father, we give you thanks this morning for giving us all the opportunity to be gathered here in your presence, here in the chamber and online. And Lord, this morning in particular, we pray for our new Chief Executive, Martin, as he leads the Comhairle in a new journey and a new direction for him. And Lord, we pray that you would be with him and guide him with true integrity in all that he has to do in the coming years. And Lord, we pray for our chair as he leads us through this Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And we welcome all the excellent work that he has done over the years for us as a council, and that we fully understand the importance of infrastructure to our island communities. And Lord, we also pray for the new Parliament that has been established in Edinburgh since we last met, and that they would fully understand and that you would guide them in accepting the unique situations that we are faced in islands, and particularly in the connectivity that is required to make sure that we are not disadvantaged from other areas. And Lord, we pray for all members of the council as we enter our last year of this council term, and that you would be with us and guide us and direct this Comhairle to make sure that all the additional funding, external funding that has been delivered and fought for so hard for those islands are spent right across the islands, and that all our communities will benefit from them. And Lord, we pray for all the chief officers and all the staff in the Comhairle and the valuable assets that they are to us going forward, that you will be with them all and that they enjoy coming to work here, and that under the additional pressures and challenges they face, that they would be productive in the work that they undertake. And Lord, we also pray for our own community and the challenges that are faced with this increased energy costs and the increased food costs that all families are being faced with at this particular time. And Lord, we pray that as a council that we go as far as we can in making sure that those that are most in need are being provided with. And Lord, we pray that all the world leaders around us would see the need for peace in a troubled society, and that all the leaders would come together and that they would come to some compromise that would be for the benefit of all. And Lord, we pray for the many in our community that are suffering from ill health and either from addictions or anything else that is upsetting their way of life, that you be with them and guide them, and the excellent care service that is provided from the Comhairle and the Health Board, and that you would be continue with all the staff and all the duties that they undertake. And Lord, that we remember all our younger generation, and as we heard earlier in the week, and the achievements that they are doing when they're travelling to mainland locations, that you would continue to be with them and guide them through their career structure. And Lord, as we approach the summer break, that you will be with them, and that we remember those families that will be faced with additional challenges in feeding their children during the summer months, that you be with them all. And Lord, as we all remember our own journey in life and where we are, your word tells us that I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. And Lord, we see that from a spiritual side, that we make sure that our destiny is sure and accounted for. And we ask all those things in your name, for Christ's sake. Amen.
Right, thank you, Duncan. Right, the meeting is now being recorded. In regard to the conduct of the meeting, a reminder of the following. If you are a member of the committee attending remotely, please leave your camera on and your microphone off. Officers attending remotely, please leave both off unless you are called to speak to a report or answer a question. A reminder to members and officers in the chamber of the queuing system. The chair controls the mics. First in the queue flashes green and the remainder are solid green. The chair will allow each flashing mic in, which will change to red. Only 2 mics on the floor will be red at any one time. If you wish to come back to a question, please leave your mic on, and officers speaking to the reports, I would advise you to do the same. Committee members will be given priority. In regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. Item 9 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting, and prior to moving into private, participants, other than the relevant officer and members, will be asked to leave the meeting. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the Comhairle's website following the meeting. So if we move on to item 1, which is minute of meeting of 25th March 2026, and that's for approval. Are we happy to approve? Yes, thank you. Next item is meeting of Hightown's of 24th April 2026, which is for noting. And just on this, I have asked officers of Hightown's to attend the next meeting of the Transportation Committee, because there are current issues in relation to Transport Scotland, regional transport partnerships, and the ferry stakeholder groups. So we're not quite clear what direction of travel is with that. So hopefully by the next committee we'll know where that is heading. So they've accepted the invitation and will come to the next meeting. Okay, item 3, declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items of the agenda. It would be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Any declarations? Anybody? I don't see any. Okay. Item 4 is Loganair presentation, and I would like to welcome from Loganair Ronnie Matheson, Chief Commercial Officer, and Simon McNamara. Simon is at that end, Head of Government and Corporate Affairs. As you know both, there's strong feelings on this issue in the community, and you've knocked ferries off the front page, so well done on that. So I'll allow you to presentation first, then we'll have questions, and I understand your flight is not until 4, so hopefully we'll try and finish before then. Okay. Have you put your light on? Yeah, can. You're going first, Ronnie, yes?
Yes, I'll go first.
Okay.
Yep. Just put the presentation up. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ronnie Matheson, Chief Commercial Officer from Loganair. Nice to meet all of you and great to be here in Stornoway. Just want to run through a couple of slides here, just talking about just general performance first of all, and then we'll move on to the subject of Inverness-Stornoway route, and we'll cover that in more detail at in the last couple of slides. I'll quickly kind of run through the kind of the BAU slides, if you like, and performance, then we'll move to that subject fairly quickly. Yep, first slide. So yeah, just a couple of points. First of all, just to talk about our on-time performance. We, as a company, have spent or invested significant amounts into standby aircraft and resilience performance. So we're really pleased to continue to see the on-time performance and the controllable delays within 15 minutes at such a high level. This is well above industry standard, and this is actually drilled down into the Western Islands area. So you can see that we're certainly for the last couple of months over 90% in our controllable delays over 15 minutes. Just to give some context on that, the national average is around in the high 70s, low 80s. So we are punching above our weight here in terms of that performance, and really pleasing to see that come through in our performance. Just on passenger performance then, so this chart here's just highlighting the passenger numbers over the last couple of years, and we've got the first couple of months of this financial year in April and May. So we're sitting roughly about 3% down. That's actually on May numbers alone. Again, just to give some context around that side of things, as an industry, we've certainly seen demand slow across the whole network, not just here. And actually we're seeing a higher number across the rest of the network. So to be only 3% down in May is not a bad performance. However, we are obviously watching with interest how that moves over the coming months. But overall, I'm pleased to say for the first 5 months of the year, we're roughly about flat year on year in terms of our passenger numbers. So no significant change from that side of things as yet. But as I say, we will expect to see some change on that in the coming couple of months. Just an update on the weather performance. So this chart here highlights on the left-hand side, really kind of shows the weather cancellations, and as you can see, back in January when we had the significant snow event, there was quite a change in number of cancellations we had. Just for context, across the network, we were roughly about 10,000 passengers disrupted in that period, and that ran into around about £2 million worth of revenue loss across the network. This is not just specifically on the Western Isles, but then you can see since January we've had very minimal weather cancellation disruption in the Western Isles compared to what we've seen around the rest of the network. But yeah, just really kind of highlighting that January point as the standout there. So now let's move into Inverness Stornoway. So I guess I'll spend a lot more time running through this, but yeah, before we get into the specifics of the route, just wanted to set some context around what's happening with this route. It doesn't exist in isolation. There's a number of issues facing the market in general, and there's 3 things that I really wanted to highlight before we jump into the specifics. I guess the starting point is that Inverness Stornoway as a route itself has never actually covered its costs certainly over the last few years, and we have been loss making on this particular route. And Loganair's essentially covered those costs entirely without any government support. We've done that as a matter of principle, because we are Scotland's airline, and these communities do matter to us. But as a private business, we can only sustain that for so long before it starts to threaten the wider operation. The second point then, as I've just touched on briefly, is, and I think this really deserves much more attention, and is certainly relevant in this committee today, is that every single route in and out of Stornoway is commercially operated by Loganair. There is no funding, there's no public subsidy, there's no protected status on any of these routes. This is our commercial operation for all of these routes, which, when you do compare to the ferry network that we touched on there, where the long-term public funding is laid out and considered, that's a very different situation that Loganair faces. And I think the third point is to touch on the environment that we're operating in at the moment as well. I've put a quote on here from Willie Walsh, who's the outgoing IATA Transport Director General, And just really kind of highlighting this point around the fuel price changes over the last few months. So according to IATA's data, they're seeing roughly about 70% higher year-on-year fuel prices. We're actually seeing more than that in some of the months, and certainly in the last couple of months, but this is a kind of average over the year. And I think the other key point there is that the industry profitability is expected to halve, and will forecast to fall to around 2%, which is a really small margin to operate on, and really kind of highlights the exposure that the aviation industry does have. And I do think as well it's right to point out at this point that there has been 4 airlines have actually have gone out of business in the last 9 months in the UK alone. So it's really worth kind of highlighting that point and just making the point around the challenges of the market in general. So moving on to the frequency reduction on Inverness Stornoway. So I think just to start off with, this is not a decision that we wanted to make as a company. Luke Farajala, our CEO, has been out in the press recently making that point that this has been one of the toughest decisions that we've had to make as a business. We are absolutely aware of what this route means to people. Whether it's getting to hospital in the mainland, the business meetings, keeping local enterprise going, reaching family and friends. We're absolutely aware that these are not ordinary journeys, and we're certainly not, we've never treated them as such. But that's why we have kept this route going at a loss for years. As I mentioned, we are privately owned. We've chosen to absorb the losses because we felt it was the right thing to do. And we still believe that there's a proper solution that can be found to help support us with operation of this route. And we very much believe that is the case. However, as I touched on, the environment we are operating in has changed dramatically. I touched on the fuel costs. Maintenance costs is a significant challenge for the aviation industry as well. We are spending much more on engine maintenance. It's taking longer for engines to go through the workshop. There's parts supply issues as well. There is a number of challenges that put the pressure back onto the aviation world that makes it even more challenging. And as already touched on, there is 4 airlines that have disappeared in the UK in the last 9 months alone, and we feel we have that responsibility to protect the wider network that island communities across Scotland, not just here, depend on, and that means we cannot keep absorbing losses as a business. We spent many months working with Eilean and Transport Scotland to try and find a workable path forward. These conversations have been genuine, and we remain fully committed to them. But what has been offered so far does not bridge the gap in the funding that we need, and we reached the point where we've had to act. And I think one of the points I've put on the slide here is that this wasn't just a discussion that we entered into in the last few weeks. We actually started this conversation at the tail end of last year, when it was becoming apparent that the losses were widening, and that was before obviously the shock into the system from the Middle East conflict in the back end of February. So we have been having these conversations for around over 6 months now in that period. So as I mentioned on the slide, regrettably we have had to take action and remove the morning rotation from Inverness Stornoway, and that's from the 20th of July through to the end of the summer airline season, which is the 23rd of October. And we do have the route on sale for the winter period. We've left that on sale. However, that's an anticipation that we can reach a funding agreement with the relevant stakeholders to allow us to move forward. And yeah, as I say, we're here, we're at the table. We are asking and echo the point to the committee that we are looking for as much support as we can get to help with these conversations with the various stakeholders across the around this route. So 4 things I'd like to leave with. Certainly, the first thing to say is this is a temporary reduction, not a withdrawal. One rotation is suspended, everything else continues. We're not stepping back from our commitment to the community, but just reiterate this is pending the discussions with the relevant stakeholders, and the second point being that it is possible to fully restore the route if we're able to secure funding. Then we will certainly be running the route in late October. If the funding is there earlier, then of course we will look to bring that earlier if we can possibly do that. The third here is, as I mentioned, we need help making that case as well. So we are, like I say, speaking with Eilean and indirectly through Eilean to Transport Scotland. The issue has been raised with the Scottish Government. It was referenced in Holyrood just the other week, and Simon has been having various discussions with MSPs and MPs alike across the network around this point. And then the fourth point here is that what we're facing here is not unique to this route or to Loganair. There is no long-term framework in this country for protecting air services that communities need, but it cannot survive on commercial revenues alone. So as we talked about, ferries and roads receive sustained public investment. Aviation serving remote communities deserves to be part of that same conversation. Without that, this will happen again. So in summary, we absolutely care about getting this right. As I touched on, it is regrettable that we've had to remove the route the frequency for this period, but we will keep working at it, and we're grateful to be able to speak to you about it today. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
Questions, okay. And you'll have seen this document anyway, I'm assuming, the two of you, how it's handled in the rest of Europe. Yep. Yeah.
This is the high trans.
Yeah. Now, myself and the council leader met with a new cabinet secretary in Transport Scotland in South Hewes last week, of course, and we dwelt quite heavily on this issue, and we did present him with a paper as well on it. Don't know if he had time to read it before he went off on holiday, but I don't know if there's been any discussions with yourselves yet with the cabinet secretary. Yeah. Can you move the mic back up? I can't see the light. Just move it that way, aside. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. There we go. Yeah. So, good morning, everybody. Simon McNamara, I'm Head of Government and Corporate Affairs at Loganair. So we've spent some time discussing this with the Scottish and indeed with the Westminster governments, actually, and not just in relation to this route, but over a sustained period. This country has no strategy when it comes to, as Ronnie said, to regional air connectivity by air. And I've had the privilege in my career of working in regional aviation for almost 30 years, mainly in European affairs. And I see how other countries do it. And I'm sure you see how other countries do it as well. How Norway does it, how the Azores do it, how the Greek islands do it, how Sweden does it, how Iceland does it. And it's a very different model to this country in terms of the way central government approaches it, the way central government goes out and identifies the routes that need support. And it comes forward with a strategy to support those routes. And it works in many cases, in almost all cases, with private airlines to fulfill and support those routes. So you have some examples of that in the Western Isles with the routes that exist already, using our Twin Otter, whereas, Transport Scotland, the Scottish Government own two of those aircraft and we operate them on their behalves. But we have been having a discussion, and it's around point 4, that this needs to be solved. And certainly the feedback that I've had, particularly from the Scottish Parliament, and you mentioned at the start of the meeting the new MSPs coming in. We met the new Shetland MSP. We met Donna McKinnon, your new MSP here last week as well. And we also met Liam MacArthur from Orkney as well. I think the sense amongst them is that they want to try and solve this in this Parliament and elevate it. So I think there's two issues here. One is the short-term issue, which we're acutely aware of, as Ronnie said, on the Inverness route. And then there's a longer-term strategic thing. And I think the work that High Trans is doing, particularly under Usheen's leadership, is extremely important for applying pressure on that.
You're meeting with the Health Board later on if we finish in time here, of course. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We're having some conversations with the airport. We continue that discussion with Heil and also obviously with some of the affected stakeholders. We're hoping to meet the NHS a little bit later as well. So all of the stakeholders involved, and we are deliberately being here and willing to take criticism as well. We're not absolving ourselves of responsibility. I think, as Ronnie said, is we recognise we have a role to play in this. So we're not just saying it's somebody else's problem entirely, but it's not entirely our problem to bridge that funding gap. And I think that's the debate we want to have with you.
Okay, questions. Who's first? Yeah, I can see it now. Can you speak into it as well?
Okay, thank you very much and good morning. Thanks for your presentation. And I mean, you use words of commitment to community and Scotland Airlines, and you know these islands means a lot to you. And also you talk about fuel surcharges and maintenance and all the challenging factors that leads to the situation you're applying now. But I mean, you're applying astronomical prices, especially without talking about the Stornoway sort of Inverness. I'm just talking in general about Stornoway, Glasgow, Benbecula, Glasgow. The prices you're applying to, you know, they're in no way justifiable in the eyes of the normal people in the community. At the same time, you're saying obviously you have challenging financial climate, but you've just opened a new route from Guernsey to East Midland in May. You know, so how can these challenging factors, do they only apply in Scotland and the Western Isles, or do they reduce across, you know, south of the border, or is the same fuel charges you pay anywhere? And so how can you fly small numbers south of the border and make money and sustain a route, but you can do it over here and you maximize? I mean, the prices that people charge from Benbecula to Glasgow for nearly £600. I mean, that's in any economy, it's not justifiable. So
can you keep your light on, please, Mustafa?
Yes, thanks for the question. Just with regards to pricing, you know, I think the key point here is you know, costs are different on these thinner markets that we serve. There's certainly and demand as well as a factor in that, and the pricing that is in the marketplace is designed to allow us to cover costs of flying, operating aircraft into these into local island communities in thin markets is not cheap. It is not cheap. So certainly pricing reflects that level of demand that we see. And obviously we have to try and cover our costs. We have to try and make it financially sustainable. We do have a wide range of pricing, and I'm absolutely aware that pricing is referenced a lot, especially when it's, you know, like you mentioned there, around £600–700 in some cases. However, there is a wide range of pricing that allows people to book in advance and pick up fares from around £130 one way. Again, that's the dynamic pricing that's required in airline pricing to allow people who book in advance or who are you know, can plan in advance, allow them to have a cheaper option versus people booking in the last minute market where the price is higher. That's really the main driver. You know, cost is the big thing, is the biggest item for us here, particularly in the island airports. Airport charges are higher as well, compared to some of the airports down south, where there are other opportunities for airports to pick up more different revenue streams. So whether that's through car parking or retail space, etc., that doesn't necessarily pass through into the aeronautical fees that we see in some of the island airports up here. But that's also understandable given the infrastructure challenges that the likes of Eilean have in some of these airports as well. So that's part of the reason for the majority of the reason for the differential pricing, and the market dynamics as well. Demand is thin, so to sustain the operation, especially when we've got multi-frequency services, where cost is high and increasing, that really drives the price. I just also want to touch on your point around opening new routes as well, and again, it's unfortunate in the timing sense that yes, we did launch routes to France from Jersey. That was a move that the company had made in November following the unfortunate closure of Blue Islands in the Channel Islands, and again, the aircraft, the network, so the aircraft availability that Loganair have as a business was able to pick up that part of the network, which shouldn't have driven any change, or doesn't drive any change into the network in north of the border in Scotland. We have 2 new aircraft that were due to arrive earlier in the year that were delayed. Again, referencing back to my point around maintenance schedules and challenges with aircraft delivery, but that was all pre-planned activity. So I completely appreciate that route launch has happened at a really sensitive time here, but yeah, it's regrettable that the timing of that had happened that way, but it was certainly not a, you know, there's not a link between stopping routes in Scotland and starting routes in Jersey at all.
But that's how it looks. Can you tell me what's the average price in your new route between Guernsey and...
Average price, what, sorry?
Average price in your new route that you just opened between Jersey and...
So between Jersey and Paris, I mean, it's variable. It's a new route, so roughly about 130, 140 pounds one way.
Okay, I heard that it was less than that. But I think one of the other factors you didn't mention is probably in other area you have competition. And I think on the island here, you have the monopoly to decide, because you tell me the variation in landing fees and charges on the island to other island and to other places in the mainland are so high that the differential price is that. I mean, we're not talking about 20, 30, 50 pounds. We're talking about hundreds of pounds. I mean, it's...
Yeah, and let me address the point on competition. If you roll back around 9 years, when Flybe existed, which was then the largest regional airline in the UK, they did bring competition to not just here, but into Shetland and Orkney as well, and that did not last. There was no market growth at all in that, despite dropping prices, despite trying to fill up aircraft. It just didn't move the market at all. Some people, yes, would have benefited, surely, local people would have benefited for sure of lower pricing, but it was completely unsustainable. And not only have they pulled out of flying from the islands, they now no longer exist. So again, I reiterate the point that sustainability, financial sustainability for Loganair, and I hasten to add here that we are a debt-free business. We're not in any kind of financial trouble, but we cannot be complacent around that point. We have to operate a financially sustainable business that works for both Loganair and the network that we serve. So yeah, the point on competition, as I say, it just didn't work out before, and we just don't see that kind of uplift. Whereas further south, there is some different market dynamics at play, like you've referenced.
Thank you very much.
George,
Thank
next. Can you?
Thank you,
and then
Chair.
Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Just a comment. I've got a couple of questions for you, but I think your logo should be mainland Scotland's airline, because you're not our airline anymore, and not any of the islands. It's been an absolute public relations disaster how you've handled the people of these islands, Shetland and Orkney, and it'll be difficult to gain that trust again, I have to say. But I want to ask you about your complicated fare system. I've booked a fare with Loganair, only available on the phone, and because I'm a pensioner, I can get it at a very favourable rate. Not advertised anywhere that I've seen, and that baffles me. That's my first point. The second point, when someone books the day before for an empty plane going from Stornoway to Glasgow or Stornoway to Inverness, surely it's better to give it to them at a favourable fare rather than run the plane empty. I mean, that seems to me mad. Instead of asking for 600 quid and the person doesn't go, so that passenger won't travel because they can't afford it. So I'm just a boy from Stornoway. I don't understand the deep economics of it, but my goodness, surely it's better to have a full plane at reasonable prices than empty planes at high prices.
Can you keep your light on, George,
Yes,
in case you haven't?
And-
Say, Ronnie.
And I
second.
think, just to address your first point, I think we, as I said in my introduction presentation, we are absolutely committed to working with the key partners and key stakeholders to try and re-establish ourselves again on this route. We are absolutely committed to the island communities. And yeah, as I say, we regret the position that we're in, having to remove the flying. And I appreciate your view on the PR side of things. There was, there's certainly some timing issues there that drove that. Just around pricing, I'll be honest, I need to take away the view, the understanding on what the over the phone fare was. I'm not actually aware of it myself. I'm relatively new into the company, so I'll find out more about that one for you. I wasn't aware that we had a different fare over the phone for you. But certainly around economics, pricing wise, yeah, I think it's an interesting debate for sure. Demand is the biggest driver for this year. Like I say, we want to offer the lower market fares at the outset of when we put the flight on sale. We put fares in around 130, 140 pounds, and then we build up to the very end of the life of the flight. It's a well tested formula. I'm not saying it's correct all the time, and it's something that we're certainly aware of, and we do get this feedback. We do get feedback occasionally about our fares, and that's something that certainly in my new capacity in the company, being here for about just under 6 months, something I intend to look at as well. But the standard market dynamics are that lower pricing, the further out you book, the lower the price is. The closer in you book, the higher the price. That's our kind of standard pricing model.
Okay, yeah, that's maybe all right for EasyJet going to Rhodes or going to Canaries. We have to use you, and I think we're caught between a rock and a hard place. I would like to see figures, landing costs for other airports,
comparable to the airports of these islands. Comparable landing costs, because if that justifies a £700 fare, then there's something wrong somewhere. And if that's your explanation for higher fares, that landing costs are a part of it, I'd like to see these figures. Wonder, are they really that much a factor? Thank you, Chair.
Want to come back on the landing charges issue, or is that something you can?
Yeah, there we go. Just on the landing fees point, and I think we can come back and share. So obviously some of it is commercially confidential and it's Eilean's charges, right? So we can't necessarily divulge that, but I'm sure we can enter. Well, because it is commercially confidential with their permission. I'm sure we can. So I'm sure we can enter into a discussion to show you some of the economics of it, and we've made that commitment elsewhere. Just one point on again other networks. If you look at how other countries approach this, if you look at the tariff charges for somewhere like Sweden, the regional airport tariffs are significantly lower than the hub airport. In other words, the main base. So in Sweden, it's Stockholm. It's completely the reverse in this country. The tariff rates in the big hub airports are significantly lower than the rates at the regional airports. And that's because this country has privatized a lot of activities, as you know. And so those regional airports have to operate as an entity in their own right. So they have, as Ronnie explained, limited revenue and they have high costs. Whereas in other countries, they cross-subsidize and they support the regional airports to lower the tariffs. And that is a structurally different situation in this country. So, and I think the numbers would bear that out as well. So the average cost to operate to a regional airport in this country is significantly higher. And even if you just look at the tariff rates for a company called Swedavia, which is the Swedish operator versus this country, it's all in the public domain. And you will see that those numbers are significantly different. And it comes back to the fact that there is a longer term issue. There is no strategy on Highland and island connectivity in this country. Because if a market is regulated and controlled by government, you can dictate things like price, you can dictate things like frequency. But if it's a commercial market, that's much more difficult to do because it's an open market. So I think there is a longer term debate about how island services are protected, and that does involve government as well. So I think that's a very important discussion to have down the track.
Okay, Gordon, you were next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I think I concur with my colleagues who have spoken before. I think it will be very helpful for us to know what is actually pushing the price of the flights up, and a breakdown in the figures that is different to the mainland airports, because as you know, the fuel prices and the maintenance costs are probably uniform across the industry. So if we know what is pushing the price up, we're able to kind of be better informed in trying to support some sort of funding mechanism for you, because the prices at the moment are so high. You'll know that we've probably got the lowest average income in the country, so getting a plane is just not an option for a lot of people. And I wanted to ask, on one of your pages there was passenger numbers and you had 15,000 and 13,000. Can I ask, what is the percentage of how full it is, passengers, actual passengers versus the full capacity? How are we doing? Because it's quite difficult to know if the plane is full or is it 75% full. Would you have that at the
I don't have
page 4, is it?
I don't have the stats in front of me here, but I can tell you, load factor as we refer to it will be in the region of between 65 to 75%, and on some of the routes. Average is probably in about the 60s, high 60s.
How does that compare to mainland? And would the price differential affect passenger numbers? What I'm trying to say is, if you lower the price, would you get more passengers? And has a business cost benefit analysis been made that if you lower the price, you might get more people on?
Yep, and I've referred back to the competition times. I appreciate that was 9 years ago, but certainly that was a significant change in the market in general, and that was significant fare changes, and the market did not see significant change in load factor performance. In fact, it was load factor deteriorated because the two airlines were effectively sharing the passenger volumes between them and on more capacity. So rather than fill into the volume, I think over time, certainly through COVID period, demand patterns have changed again as people work from home. Travel patterns have changed as well. Frequencies have changed and schedules have adapted to that as well. So I think the point I made earlier about thinner markets, trying to stimulate demand by lowering price significantly leads to a more of a negative revenue outcome or negative performance outcome for this business. And I'm not suggesting that means we flatline pricing at £500–600. That's not the case. That, as I mentioned, we have a range of different prices in the marketplace depending on when people book. The last thing we want to do is get to, basic revenue management. If we kind of average out the price, then what we do is you cut off the people who would book, who would pay less, or who only can afford the lower fares at the early part of the booking curve. So what we don't want to do is push the price up there and drop the price at the closer end, because all you're doing there is changing the market demand as well. So there's a balance to be had. I appreciate that, and I'm hearing loud and clear the feedback on pricing, but it's certainly not as simple as we pull the price lever and all of a sudden we fill in all the empty seats on the flight. It doesn't work like that.
Last question, Chair, sorry. What exactly would you be looking for the government intervention? Is it funding and policy change, or both? And what exactly are you looking for?
Can you put it off, Ronnie?
I'll put mine on.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think again, there's two issues here. One is the short-term Inverness frequency issue, and I think what we're looking for is a temporary funding uplift to bridge the gap in the funding on the route, which allows us to bring that route back and for it to cover its costs. So there's a short-term temporary financial uplift, direct financial uplift from the government. That's the first action, I think, and that addresses the short-term problem that you're clearly facing, and obviously you feel extremely passionately about, which we very much respect. And then the second is a longer-term policy change to look at a strategy and to review the public service obligation network in this country. So it's two things: short-term financial uplift to solve the problem, and secondly, a policy change to address lifeline connectivity in the UK.
Okay, I'm going to let Ian McCauley online. He's been waiting a while. Ian.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. If you can indulge me, Chair, I've got 3 points to make. My first one harks back to what my colleagues were saying. Looking at the Glasgow to Stornoway flight, I wouldn't really describe our Stornoway-Glasgow flight as a thin market. It's an actually very busy route. I had a quick look this morning at 3 comparable flights, all Loganair, all presumably with about the same size of plane and the same time roughly. Southampton to Newcastle, £244 return. Glasgow to Derry, 224. Glasgow to Stornoway, 372. Nearly 50% more for the Glasgow to Stornoway. Since you mentioned landing, I quickly looked up the landing fees for both Stornoway and Derry. That includes the navigation charge. Now, Derry is actually more expensive. According to my Google look here, Derry was £500 and Stornoway nearly £400 for landing fees. So I still really don't understand. I still think we're being penalised for not a thin market, really. That's my first point. My second point is, I understand you've been in conversation with SIC. We've had presentations from them for the work they're going to be doing up in Lewis. And my worry is, well, maybe you could outline how you see the next 2 or 3 years. How is it going to materialise? That these flights are obviously going to be a lot busier. There's going to be a lot more people. I can imagine a lot of people on the Friday and the Monday runs. Dynamic pricing is not going to help any islander. We are workers as well, trying to get away for work, trying to get home. I spoke to a guy the other day, he was stuck offshore, he couldn't get home. Dynamic pricing for us is going to be a nightmare. It's a nightmare anyway, obviously, but it's going to be really bad. What sort of discussions have you had with it? I appreciate some of that might be confidential, but is there going to be extra flights on? Is there going to be special flights for, are you going to make sure the locals are well served? My third point, compassionate fares. Congratulations on this. This was a very, very fantastic initiative that you had, and it's helped a lot of people. I understand when you took it out, first of all, in 2015, there was approximately 400 people taking you up on it. And I just wondered, are these figures still round about the same, 400 people? There are a lot of people, I think, now not aware of it, and maybe it's time to maybe give it a wee bit more publicity. Well, brought this on to me, I spoke to an elderly couple of weeks ago in Glasgow, coming home for a funeral, and they told me it cost them £1,000 for them both to come home for a funeral. They didn't know anything about the compassionate fares. I did a quick check myself just now, and it would be £890 fly up on Friday if I had to come home from Glasgow to a funeral. It's a fantastic thing, and they should be complimented for it, but I feel that not a lot of people know about it. It has the added issue here that funerals often happen within 2 or 3 days, not 2 or 3 weeks as it is on the mainland. And that sort of puts a bit of pressure on people when, if they're in a bereavement and they've got to find all the paperwork and everything that you require, quite rightly so. So sorry, 3 questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the questions there. So just to take your first point, you talked about the Southampton, Newcastle, and comparing various different fares there. I mean, I don't have to hand exactly what the bookings were like on each of the flights. I mean, that's another factor in the pricing position. What I can, the other point you raised around airport charges, and we touched on it earlier. We certainly, there is rates that are published on the website or via Google, like you've just done there. There's published tariffs. The majority of airports that we fly to, we do work on deals with them. So there is commercially sensitive agreements, like Simon touched on. Some of those will be referenced around, X amount of passengers coming through the airport, etc. So that changes the shape of the pricing on those particular routes as well. Yeah, as I say, I can't comment specifically on the individual flights that you've looked at there, but there is other factors in play. It's not just the published rates that are available on every airport website are not necessarily what we pay for those particular airports. So there is, like I say, commercially sensitive agreements there.
Yeah, they're all Loganair flights on a fly-only basis for the first weekend in August.
Okay. Yeah, as I say, I don't have anything in front of me to comment exactly on them, but I can just give you the kind of general, the general points around why pricing is different on those particular flights. Your point about SSEN, I can confirm that we are in discussions with regular discussions with SSEN around the project over the coming years. We have a working group with all of the subcontractors involved in that as well, so that we can understand what the likely demand is over on all the routes over the next few years. In particular, bearing in mind that the project will ramp up over the next couple of years, and we're absolutely aware of the impact, as are SSEN, I hasten to add, aware of the impact that will have on local travel. So we are in discussions with them. I won't go into any of the details yet. We're in the commercial discussions with them around how do we support that, but more importantly, how do we make sure that we have a sustainable service for the Stornoway community overall. So we're very aware of that. And as I say, we are in regular discussions with them on that point, including looking at forecasts as well, and that will lead into our discussions on future fleet planning, future schedule planning. All of that is very much on our roadmap right now. And then your point on compassionate fares, I was aware of compassionate fares. I don't have the numbers to hand as to what that looks like, and I take on board your feedback around how do we circulate that and let people know about that as well. So I will take that one away and work on that within my team, and I can feed back into this group as well.
You want to come back, Ian, and then if...
Yes, thank you all. Thank you both very much for very much for your replies on these. With regard to your conversations, which I appreciate are perhaps partly confidential with the SSE, what assurances can you give us today, or are you going to be coming back to you're having talks with them, but are you having talks with us as well? And what assurances can you give us today that the locals will not be affected either by not getting flights or by having to pay extremely large fares because of the dynamic prices? I would imagine if these people are knowing they're going to be flying up and down here all the time, they're going to be booking these things well far in advance, which everybody, of course, should do, but it's not always possible for local people to do that. So any assurances that you can give us that we won't be... Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, as I say, SSE have been very vocal on our calls and linking in with the local community here. That's been they're very aware of the impact that especially the vast number of contractors required over, certainly peaks over, I believe it's 2028, 27, 28, 29. So they are very, very aware of that. That's why they're in discussions with us so early. At the moment, there is some movement, but it's very small numbers. Like you say, moving out on Mondays and coming back on, I think it's the second Thursdays, I think it is on a couple of the routes. But we are, as I say, as a business, we are very much looking at, right, how do we ramp up our capacity? I already touched on, we have two new aircraft to us arriving in the fleet. And we're certainly looking at future fleet plans and capacity plans that allow us to continue to serve the markets, the local markets here, while still able to service the rising contract demand. So the assurance I'm giving you is that this discussion is underway at the moment. As soon as we have locked down our plans with SSE on behalf of all of the contractor groups as well, I can tell you that the various subcontractors are also involved in this call, and when they can move their people around, it's all very much about coordination and working together so that we don't end up in a situation like you've described, where people are just going off and booking flights and it's locking out the local community. So it's a considered project group, and that's the assurance I can give you at the moment. And as I say, as soon as we've got plans on what does future fleet and capacity look like over the coming years, we can certainly feed back into this group as well.
Thank you very much. Your reassurance is very much welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Now I've got about 8 people waiting. Can you put off your light, Councillor McNeill? I do have you on you're about 8th on the list at the moment. Kenneth McLean from Barra, you were. Kenneth?
Oh, I feel bad because maybe I'm going to say the things he wanted to say and now he can't. So it's 2 things, one larger, and I'll get to the second one once you've answered it so it doesn't get too muddled up. Just looking at the flights, I just pulled up an example of a return flight from Barra to Glasgow. There's 3 separate tickets, and I know this has been raised multiple times with you. I might even have emails myself. There's a cheap ticket, a medium ticket, and an expensive ticket. Now, our aircraft is effectively a flying minibus. There's no curtain in the middle, and there's no first class section, and there's no second class section, and there's no what have you. Why is it that I'm forced to buy the expensive ticket because the other 2 are supposedly sold out? And why is it that the benefits listed for this expensive ticket, 30 kilograms hold luggage? The Barra flight here are restricted to 15 kilograms. And even then, occasionally you show up to the airport and you're told the aircraft's overweight, somebody needs to effectively be kicked off this flight. You're going to use instead, or you're getting the ferry or what have you. Or things like, what is this, fast track security. I don't know if you've been to Barra Airport. We don't have multiple lanes to go through. There is 1 lane. There's no fast track. Complimentary snack and drink. I'm from Barra. I'm 37 years old. I've been on that flight who knows how many times. I don't particularly care for the drink or a snack, but I have never received one. How is it you're able to advertise all these benefits for something that you quite literally cannot give? Is that I don't know if that's even legal. Lastly, this might have changed because the last time it was brought up with me was about a year ago, so it might be changed. And when I hovered over the wee eye symbol, it says it excludes Orkney and Shetland, or it's the Northern Islands. The reward system, last time I checked, doesn't apply to us. But you have a monopoly here. We have to use you. I can't go to British Airways and and get a flight from Barra. So why is it this reward system doesn't apply to us? Maybe that one has changed. I don't know about that one.
You can keep your light on, Kenneth. We appreciate your humour.
Yeah, okay, so let's start with the 3 products. Yeah, I think I'll take that one away. I mean, you've laid out quite succinctly the challenges with what we've put there.
Imagine all 12 people showed up with 30-kilogram bags to Barra Airport, demanded fast track, demanded snacks. You'd have to put on a second flight just for the luggage.
Yeah. No, I hear your point loud and clear there, and be assured I will take that one away and we will review the product. I don't think there's much else I can really add to that one.
Or you put first class in. I want to see.
Well, I mean, that's another consideration. Right? Your second point, sorry, can you? So you're talking about the Avios points.
Yeah, I think that's what they call it here. That might have changed since the last time it was brought up with me.
I think so. The move to Avios. So the change in the loyalty program happened last year, right? And that was in it. The clan points was changed, and now it's part of the wider Avios group that is underpinned by IAG, so the parent company of British Airways. So there should be changes to that. I'm not aware that we've taken any routes out of the Avios program. So I'm hoping that your points challenge is changed with that move over to the what we've now rebranded it as Loganair Loyalty, which then allows you to collect the Avios points, which can then be spent on other, not just the Loganair network, but other airlines as well. So I'm not aware that we've excluded that, but again,
It does say it excludes the Northern Isles, and under the old your own system, it did exclude us. So I don't know if that's been.
It was certainly on the intra-island Orkney flying the contract flying that we do up there, it wasn't included in that. I do know that, but it shouldn't be excluded elsewhere. But I will check that out as well.
Okay.
But
This-
thank you for your points.
Second question I don't know if this one's correct yet. I was just warned the other day. It was about, I haven't had a chance to contact the person, but I was told they were going to come to me. Do you still offer, if there's a cancelled flight, to put people in hotels and all the rest of it? I haven't confirmed if that's correct or not. I've just been told it's not the
So-
case anymore.
I think so this goes back to January, when we had the significant snow disruption across the whole network. And like I touched on, we had around 9,500, 10,000 people disrupted. It was physically impossible for us as a business to move people or to rebook everybody into hotel accommodation, especially when it was looking like, you know, some people would be stuck off island for a number of days. So we moved to what we call a pay and claim model, because otherwise people would be stuck in the airport queuing at a desk for a long period of time, when really they should be getting on their way and getting to a hotel, and rather than spending 3 or 4 hours and then actually missing out on hotel accommodation, where we have a thin amount of people at the front desk trying to book hotels. So I think that's driven a lot of confusion, because we did that at that period of time. We have reviewed our disruption policy as a result of that, and the short answer is yes, we are booking hotel accommodation for customers when there's disruption, particularly weather disruption, and a real focus on our vulnerable passenger groups as well. So anyone who's travelling with reduced mobility or through NHS travel, the priority is given to those guys to make sure that they are booked first.
So it was more just that localized.
That particular, I mean, it was a significant event for us, and I will sit here now and say that we're in June, and we are still dealing with the fallout from that, because it's just absolutely the volume of contacts as a result of that was a lot. We were just not geared up for that.
Okay, thank you. As I say, I hadn't actually, I was just warned somebody was coming to discuss Loganair with me.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. Points well made. Paul, you're next.
I've got a few questions as well, just quick ones.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Can I ask you just the percentage compared to the rest of the business? What's the percentage loss on the Stornoway run? Are you allowed to give that information? Are we in private, are we?
No.
No.
Private.
Oh, no.
We know.
I
The
mean, I
world
would-
is listening.
Okay.
I won't.
Well,
I
you
mean, I
can't
wouldn't
give that
divulge
information.
the specifics on that, but it is loss making, and we
Yeah.
are. And I'd just like to just add here, we are not looking in our funding requests. We are not looking to
No.
take this into profitability. We are
No.
looking just to cover our costs for operating the route. There's still overhead costs that we will continue to fund. However, just making that point that this is
Yeah.
not about
No.
funding Loganair's profitability on that route.
And the 2% that you talked about are there, that's across the whole business, is it?
That's globally. That's the industry average.
Industry standard.
This business operates on around about a 4% profit margin, which again, in the risk that aviation operates in, and I spoke about some of the shocks in the system around fuel maintenance, etc. It quickly erodes. That 4% can quickly erode. So and to be quite frank, is eroding.
Oh yeah.
So it's small, it's thin margins.
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying your business anyway. That's a fact.
And
5% margin would be classed as a basket case business.
Exactly.
practically.
And I think that's the aviation industry. And I think I made this point. We were in Shetland a few weeks ago, and I made the point: if I was to take a business proposal for funding, and it said, hey guys, here's a 250+ million pound turn business making a 4% margin, we'd just get laughed out the door. Nobody would back this. Nobody would back that business financially at all. And that is the world that the aviation is in. And again, reiterate the point around, you know, we've lost 4 airlines in the last 9 months. And again, you know, strongly point out, we're not in a position that we're thinking about, you know, being one of those lost airlines, but we cannot be complacent, and we have to protect the margin, and it's in the interest of all of the island communities that there is a financially sustainable Loganair to support them.
Am I allowed to ask the percentage of health board passengers that make up your complete complement of passengers on these routes?
I don't actually have that number. I mean, we have I can say that we work closely with the local NHS organisation here, and as Simon said, we're actually going to see them hopefully after this. But I don't have a specific percentage.
And just the other question I want to ask was, compared to one of your mainland routes, one of your reasonable, profitable routes, successful routes, say the Derry route or even the new route you've talked about, what's the passenger numbers compared to the passenger numbers? I mean, you give the passenger numbers here. What's the comparison in terms of numbers you're operating on those sites?
It varies by route, so it's obviously dependent on frequency, the thickness of the market as well. So yeah, there's 70 routes across the network, and every route has its own separate characteristics. I mean, Simon and I were just talking earlier. You know, if you look at like Aberdeen and Dublin as an example, it's a competed route. There's a market of 2.5 million people around Dublin. Aberdeen's around 500,000 people within an hour. Each route has its own set of dynamics. It's really difficult to give a direct comparator.
Idea, but significantly more, I suspect. Yeah. I mean, it's just good. All I was going to say quickly, just finally, is just it's good that yourself and the leader have met, because we have to get a long-term solution for this. This isn't a business that can operate. I mean, we can all talk about high prices and complain, but at the end of the day, this isn't a sustainable business. Let's be honest. And I think it's really important what yourself and the leader have done to push to get some sort of system like we have for the ferries. I mean, you saw everyone talks about the high prices. Look at Flybe. Flybe was a national airline.
Yep. Went
to the wall, couldn't survive. Not the prices. They played that low price tactic, and it doesn't work.
Yep.
They've got to fill the plane. It's simple as that. That's basic economics. We can talk about lifeline services. CalMac wouldn't operate. They wouldn't operate if they had to go on pure profit. It just wouldn't happen. So we have to get behind these guys. We really do, and try and make sure that we get some sort of proper strategy. But we talk about the islands plan, and we talk about island proofing. Where is it? Where is it? You know. So
right,
that's
Paul.
how I see it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Convener, you're next.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Ronnie and Simon, for coming along to today's meeting and, you know, giving a presentation and outlining, you know, the difficulties Loganair and, you know, other airlines have, and, you know, fully realise the issues regarding the Stornoway Inverness flights, Stornoway Inverness Kirkwall and Inverness Sunborough. As we know, you know, the numbers on these flights don't justify so many regular flights, and especially in the Western Isles, the Stornoway Inverness flight numbers have gone down substantially since 2008 when RAT came in, and then again, you know, in 2019 when you reduced the number of flights from Inverness to Stornoway on a daily basis. You know, the numbers just don't make, as Councillor Finnegan was saying, you know, the economics just don't stack up. But with wearing another hat, every year, on behalf of the Lewis and Harris Auction Mart, we negotiate with Loganair to change the timings of the flight between Stornoway and Inverness and Stornoway on the days of sales. And since 2019, we have worked with them successfully, and, you know, Loganair have, you know, done their best to accommodate us, and they have accommodated us. But this news about Stornoway Inverness flights, you know, the morning flights being withdrawn has come out, has, you know, hit us quite hard because it's going to add the extra cost to the holding of cattle and sheep sales in Stornoway. We're fine going away in the evening, but you know, it doesn't help that the flight from Inverness to Stornoway doesn't leave till 3:30 in the afternoon. Means an overnight stay, extra costs. It puts the sales calendar at the Lewis and Harris Auction Mart in serious jeopardy. I think I'm reading between the lines as well. Supposing the government come in next week with 1.3 million, you wouldn't be reinstating the flights between the 19th of July and 22nd of October.
I think I mentioned earlier that we're putting this proposal forward to through Eilean, and then Eilean have to then look at their stakeholder or take it to their stakeholders and go through that process. If that turns around quickly, then we will endeavour to look at how we can get the service back up and running. Our expectation is that it may take some time to get that funding to come through. And again, I reiterate the point to the group here that we need as much pressure from this group and the same in Orkney and Shetland around how do we, how can we lobby the government stakeholders to push this through. And I think, and I know when Simon's been speaking to the MPs and the MSPs, there's been similar situations to yourself, impacts of what's happening in each market and what this means to them. So I think it's really about how can we get the pressure applied to the relevant stakeholders to then get us into a position where we can then look to reinstate the route as quickly as possible. But it's very much determined on that funding being secured. And as I say, we will. I genuinely don't expect it to come through as soon as next week. But if it did, then we would certainly look at how can we bring that back.
Okay, thank you very much. Just there was a story in the local newspaper last week saying that you're going to be running other services during this period for oil workers or oil companies. Is that true?
And I think, and one of the other points linked to what I was saying about reinstatement is we have a crew base in Inverness. We have one aircraft based there. We cannot just sit with that aircraft on the ground for half the day. So as part of and without going into the complexities of how we schedule crew rosters, etc., we have to notify our crew on what they are doing over a set period of time. We had, as I mentioned, we've got additional aircraft coming into the fleet. We have various different options to fly charter services to Shetland. But now in this situation, we have a full crew set sitting on the ground in the morning. So we have chosen to utilise that aircraft and that crew to position over to Aberdeen to operate that particular flight. The two are disconnected, though. I just want to make that point. They are completely non-related transactions, if you like, or scenarios. It's one of many crew planning, fleet planning jigsaws that we have to negotiate. And as I say, the stopping of that flight has then left a hole in the schedule that we then carry an overhead that's not operating. That doesn't make the Inverness base performance work. So we need to use that crew, we need to use that aircraft. So if it wasn't going to Aberdeen, we would have been using it for something else where we could.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've got Councillor Callum McLean next.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of people, what I was going to say has actually been answered, and it's been absolutely first class questions. May I thank you for coming, both of you today, Ronnie and Simon. It's very good of you to come. I missed your presentation, but I'm glad you put give a fair warning. I could read it before you came, so thank you very much for coming. One question I would have here is, Simon, you mentioned that the tariff rates is lower in big airports and large airports rather than in regional. has that been transmitted to Hightrans, or has it been done? Is this the Scottish government responsible for this, or is it the UK government that we go to for the tariffs being so different, or how can we adopt what the likes of Denmark have got and what the likes of some of the countries you mentioned, where there is financial help from central government? Would that be Scottish government or would it be UK government?
So I think to directly answer your question, in this case, it's the Scottish government, but it's rather confusing in the UK because some of the responsibility sits in Westminster as well for supporting routes, where they tend to be routes that originate from the south to Scotland. So that obviously doesn't affect Western Isles flights because they're exclusively within Scotland. So it falls to the Scottish government. And I think it comes back to a strategy that looks at all of these factors. It looks at the cost of infrastructure in remote island communities. It looks at the total cost of operating, the cost that we face, and says, is it sustainable for Lifeline services to be operated fully commercially? And absolutely, there will be some routes that can be sustained commercially, and it's right that that's left to market forces. But there will be routes that are not commercially viable, and they should be supported. And there's a Europe-wide mechanism, which is in the paper that Justine shared there, called Public Service Obligations, which is the system that works in Barra. For those routes on the Twin Otter, and it's a Europe-wide system that was developed in the mid-90s that still exists in the UK to support Lifeline routes, and it's to government to identify what are those Lifeline routes, how can they be supported, what is the mechanism, is it direct subsidy, is it policy changes, is it alleviation from taxes, what is it that makes the route viable, and implement that policy to support it. It doesn't necessarily mean big handouts of cash. It could be policy change as well.
Yeah. I understand that. Would that be raised at Hightrans? I'm asking the chair. Well, has that been discussed? I haven't read the document, so
this paper was circulated to all members, Colin, last February. Yeah. But anyway, this was presented to government last February. This document, and I've got a copy here for you.
Well, so you'll give it to me. I'll bedtime reading tonight.
Yes,
there's
nothing. Come back with any questions you have. But yes, this has been pushed now since last February.
So it's been
with higher
since last February. Since last February.
February of this year. Yeah.
So it hasn't. We've been years. It's been years. Why? How come it's taken to February that we've started to wake up then? Has Hightrans been sleeping?
Well, it's not Hightrans.
Is it who's responsible then for pushing this forward if it's not Hightrans?
Well, it's for all of us who use the services, local authorities, RTPs, MSPs, MPs, they're all at it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that this should have been highlighted years ago, because the other question I've got is, supposing you do get some form of help for these regional airports, would that enable fares to be reduced by a considerable amount? Because when I hear the fare of Glasgow, I know exactly. I've spoken to people from Edinburgh trying to get home here for illnesses. It's going to cost them close on £1,000, and I don't see anything compassionate in reducing that to 800. I think 800 is still massively far too high. So, although I'm saying that is maybe a case, would that enable the fares to drop considerably lower? Because the fares are considerably higher than they are throughout the rest. I'm talking to my friend here, and he got from Inverness down to Luton, return for £84 for the two of them. Why? We can't get across the water hardly for £84. But the differential is enormous. And the other one is the amount of corporate travel with Loganair. And is your business, does it depend a lot on corporate travel? Because I know that because I was talking to a gentleman involved in the renewable industry just last week, and he was saying that he travels quite a lot. He's based here, he still lives here, he's a native. So, and he goes to Denmark, he goes to the Netherlands, he goes to Norway quite a lot. He goes on other aircraft, KLM, other ones as well. And he says the price then that he pays from the time he hits the UK to here is much, much more than it is anywhere in Europe. And it's not between London and Inverness, it's between Inverness, Glasgow, Edinburgh and Stornoway, and more than likely the US as well. So I say that that's our complaint really, and I know it's good of you to come and to explain some of it. I know, as Paul says here already, that you're in the conditions you're under. It's not the greatest conditions at all for finance. But I think that we need to look seriously at that, because the demand is not going to increase if the prices are going to keep as high as they are. It's as simple as that. Be all right for corporate, but not for the ordinary citizen. So unless it's going to do, then we need help.
Yeah, just on your point around fares and funding, I think that very much depends on what the support package may, if there is some kind of future support package. As Simon talked about, we, you know, there's 2 points here, which is, you know, we're raising this point around unsustainability of financial unsustainability of certain routes, which we're addressing in the short term, i.e. the Stornoway Inverness. Then there's a secondary point around, well, how do we make that work from a future long-term perspective? And I think we need to start looking at, you know, what does a funding structure look like? Can we do something that allows us to tap into funding that will then guarantee fares in a different way than what happens at the moment? So I think that's a fair point you've raised, and something that needs to go into that wider discussion around what does the future look like. And then your point around business and corporate travel, absolutely. We, you know, just like we rely on leisure travellers booking early, you know, there is a business market as well and a corporate market in there. We have, we have a number of different agreements in place with various organisations. So, and we're absolutely aware that travel costs are just as we're feeling the pinch as a business. Other businesses are feeling that pinch as well, and reviewing corporate travel agreements. But it is very important to us that we are able to, move business travellers around, just as it is for leisure travellers, just as it is for locals to visit friends and relatives as well. So very much an important part of the market. And I think, you know, the theme is loud and clear around pricing and price point, and that's very much back to us within the reasons, within the parameters that we can work within, based on the challenges that we've outlined. But I appreciate the feedback.
Inerchi, you're next. If you need to put the light off, guys.
Well, you repeat as well. Yeah, that's you. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation and coming to visit us. I'm a wee bit kind of confused on what you're after. You were saying that you would like us to go to Scottish Government and see if you could help us out. I remember a number of years ago we were looking for PSO routes to be introduced, and a previous chief executive of yours, I didn't want to hear the PSO mentioned. It was no rubbish. No, you didn't. It didn't work for you then.
I think you want me to come back on that, or okay.
Another wee question.
Go for it. No, go for it. Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
And your pay and claim, as you call it, for flights. We had a case last week. Cases last week when there were elderly people that were in hospital that had their flights cancelled, and they were told to go and arrange their own accommodation and to claim back. So could you really look at that, because
Yep.
you know it was the elderly and vulnerable that suffer when it comes to that. And if you're meeting up with NH Western Isles, if you could make sure that's ironed out, because
Yep.
we get a lot of complaints from the patient travel office how difficult it is for flights, and they're not when there's cancelled flights, and it's a disaster in getting stuff rebooked.
Yep, understood. Yeah, we will pick that one up for sure. Like I say, that shouldn't be happening. I don't know about a specific case, but we'll certainly pick it up when I get back down to Glasgow. But we'll also talk to the NHS Travel Office when we're there later. Just on your first point around PSO, I think, and as been pointed out, there's the paper has been written about PSO, and also to your point around previous management of the business and the views on PSO. I think it's fair to say the business has moved on from previous management for a start point. But second of all, I just want to kind of circle back to some of the pitfalls with PSO. It's something that we need to look at, but it also needs revision as well. We are seeing as a business, PSO routes, and as Simon touched on, are linked. There's a mix between DFT and Westminster. There's some council involvement in Scotland on various, and Transport Scotland are involved as well. So there's a number of different parties involved in these, and what we're finding is the current structure of PSO route says there's a tender process that you put your costs down with a reasonable escalation on your costs over the term of the PSO, and that drives the set of a budget number effectively. The problem that we have with them, and this is where we're looking to reform PSO overall, is that it's too rigid. So when there is shocks to the system, like what we're having, well, let's talk about, the fuel side of things in the Middle East. Let's talk about the national insurance hike from last year. And then there's maintenance shocks as well. Like I said, these are significant changes in cost levels that we as a business can then not pass on back into the PSO process, because we have signed up at year one for a 3 or 4 year term that locks us into a set of costs, and there's no movement on them. So what we talk about PSO, but I just wanted to reiterate that actually it needs a reform as well. And I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, Simon.
Yeah, I think it's worth seeing the PSO as a framework, and within that framework, there's a variety of tools. And as Ronnie says, some of them, the way it's set up in the UK, is rigid. So the PSO as a framework and as a mechanism for supporting lifeline connectivity is absolutely right. Within it, some of the setups, like the rigidity on how cost escalations within the term of a contract are increased, that needs reform in the UK. So Scotland needs a strategy for lifeline connectivity, and it needs a reformed and effective PSO system. And within that, it could be, as I said, it could be direct support, it could be alleviation from taxes, it could be alleviation from, I'll give you one example, we pay a considerable amount of cost on top of fuel, paying for emissions trading credits. For emissions trading to offset carbon, and yet the actual environmental impact of these flights is, I think, it's less than 0.5% of the entire UK, CO2 burden, but we pay a lot of money for that. The Scottish Government is consulting on removing those tariffs for island connectivity. So that's just an example of something that could be taken out of the cost base that's within control of government. So I think it's just, two things. One is the overall review of having a strategy for Scotland. Secondly is reviewing the public service obligation framework and what's within it and how it works in the UK. And the paper that Justine has tackles some of that as well.
I thought that PSO was very fixed though, and it couldn't be. What you're saying is that you want PSO, but you don't want PSO as it is. You want to have changes introduced in it.
the PSO is a frame, it's a
Yeah.
mechanism for supporting island connectivity. I think that's the best way of explaining it. And within it, there's rules on how it's set up. And I think some of those rules are quite rigid within the UK. So we need the PSOs to support island connectivity where they're not commercially viable. But some of the rules within that the UK has and Scotland and Westminster has do need review as well.
Right, Dushan, can you change that for us, please? Thank you.
But I think there's a serious point there, is that it's an obligation on us to make that point to government, but there is an obligation on, you know, elected officials, and particularly those that are directly impacted, which is, you know, which is this committee. And it's the same up in Shetland, it's the same in Orkney, is to articulate that to people who don't get out much, frankly, and don't get out to the islands. And I know that you're clearly, and I'm referring to your colleague, you know, the frustration with us, but we have been serving these communities for a long time, and we're very proud of that, and we want to keep doing it. And we do articulate the point, I think, to government that these are essential as well, but we need you as those elected representatives, and it's already happening, to make that point as well. I think it's extremely important, because otherwise these communities do get forgotten about by central governments.
Thank you.
Right, Kenneth from Harris.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thanks very much for the presentation and for all the information you've shared with us. It's been very enlightening, and certainly on a personal note, I've had many years of successful travel with Loganair. I spent 7 years traveling back and forth without any hitches or any problems, which was quite pleasant at the time, very, very good. I think there's two main issues I think we have here, and one of them, I think we as a chamber are definitely 100% behind you in trying to get a structure in place to ensure our connectivity is maintained, and we have a proper and efficient airline system that serves the need of the islands. And I think now we are 100% behind that. However, I think that in some of the things you've said, I think the lived experience of islanders is very different, and it knocks a few holes in some of the things you've said. I've got a couple of questions. Firstly, pricing wise, my own personal experience, and I think from many others, is that actually booking in advance isn't, no, booking a month in advance and being told it's 1,095 for 2 return fare to Glasgow. That's just, it's completely out with. Okay, that's non-ADS, but that was last year. And then my sister was up visiting me at New Year, and she went to book to go back single to Edinburgh. It was the earlier, the further away from when she was wanting to go was a little more expensive. She was wanting to go on the Friday. It was almost £300, but the Tuesday before that, it was £125. So actually, I'm the cynic in me. And going by what you said about the importance of business travel in your contracts, is that as soon as the holiday period was over, the fares were inflated because you knew you were going to get fares then. So what percentage of seats per flight are available as ADS seats? Is my first question.
ADS is applicable to all seats that are available on the flight. There's not it's not a set amount of inventory. So effectively, you log in with your ADS details, and then that will discount the seats on the aircraft. So there's no capping of ADS. It's literally capped by the capacity of the aircraft.
But just the number of ADS seats available at the cheaper price is less. Because
so that yes,
you will go on and there's seats available, but like Kenneth said, they're available at the higher price, but not at the lower price. So that can only mean that there is a structure in place to restrict how many ADS seats are available at the cheapest price.
So yeah, the flight is set up regardless of ADS. The flight is when it's loaded, there is a number of seats available at each specific price point. Again, forget ADS here. there's a number of seats available in each price point that's put into available through the website, and people can book those flights. The three products that you're referring to on the website are effectively well, the bottom and the middle price is effectively just the price move is effectively just the basic price of that we put into the marketplace, and then the 50% can be applied to that. The same, and I hear the point around it's only available on the top fare at certain points. That's something that I need to take away and look at, but essentially that would still be, ADS would still be applicable to that top bucket on its own, if you like.
Yeah, but as I'm saying, the structure is such that there's only a few seats available at the lower price, which go very quickly, and then as you get even a month beforehand, there's only the higher price seats available, which we know. You've mentioned the costs you're hit with yourselves. Those costs are hitting everybody here as well. We have, as is mentioned, the highest poverty levels in the UK here, and yet this air discount scheme was brought in to support islanders, but actually it doesn't make us, this doesn't help in any way, because we aren't able to book flights. I flew last month down to Glasgow, back and forth to Glasgow. Both times the plane was half empty. Now, surely as a commercial business, you want every single seat in that plane full, because every seat on that flight will contribute to your costs. Whether it's at £100 or at £50, it's going to cost now, but you want those seats filled with people paying £250, £300. Of course you do. But actually, for us as islanders, and maybe this is something that has to be built into the thing, the structure has to be there to work for us as islanders. And
yep, I understand.
The fears that have been already mentioned by other colleagues on the renewables and the availability of flights is just going to go completely out the window for us.
Yep. No, I hear your point, and the same point raised earlier as well. And I think that there's and it kind of touched on the point I raised around markets and demand, etc. as well. So in the perfect world, and go back to the Inverness London flight on a low cost carrier, it's a different market, it's a different model for us. So yes, the low cost carrier is looking at an unconstrained demand that is significantly higher than the capacity of the aircraft. Therefore, they know that they will get to 100% load factor and be able to charge much higher fares at the end and make a significant contribution. Whereas in the markets that we operate, and certainly in some of the rotations in the middle of the day and in the weaker parts of the year, we're looking at unconstrained demands of less than half the aircraft. So that all of a sudden changes what price we put into the marketplace. And like I've touched on before as well around demand and the price point, we just don't, we're not going to see 100% load factor on some of these flights, even if we pull that price lever down. So therefore that rotation becomes financially unsustainable fairly quickly, and then so the circle begins then of, well, then we have to review the flight, then we have to look at funding options, therefore then we have to take out flying, etc., and therefore that then impacts the community. So it's a tricky balance to work on, especially when these kind of thinner regional markets, and it's a very different model from the likes of some of the low cost market airlines operate in as well.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting that, because the low cost market is different. We're looking at the market for us here in the islands,
yep.
The need of the islanders, the availability of funding,
yep.
of money, and also the necessity of having to fly.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be borne in mind as well. But I appreciate there are challenges. My second question really is just an observation on the answer to the question from the convener earlier on if the money was available, would you be able to start? And you said what would happen to the contract you've just taken on then? And that if you use the flight for a new contract, is it, if the money came available next week, would you be able to still run the flight at the same time it was before?
Yep, like I say, we've got 2 new aircraft into the fleet. There's a lead time with crew resource planning, so that's one of the constraints that we would have. So, again, without going into the nuances of it, we have to plan our resource accordingly in a set period of time with the various agreements that we have in place with the crew groups. But certainly, if that money was to be made available fairly quickly, there's a lead time for us to change that aircraft back and then redeploy another aircraft onto that we would source through the network and resource the crew accordingly from other bases. As I say, we just walked past our new aircraft this morning, so that's coming online today. Is it today? So that should be online and available to the fleet, and then we have another one coming in within the next few weeks. Both of these, I hasten to add, are delayed. We did expect them earlier in the year, but again, that has no bearing on this scenario that we're talking about here.
So we're talking of the opportunity to reinstate the Inverness flight. If the funding became available soon, we're talking in a matter of just a few weeks rather than a few months.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank Vice Chair. You're next. You've had your opportunity, Mustafa, but I will give you another one.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to tell you a very short story just to illustrate my point. In the last half of last year, a small group of senior phase pupils travelled to the mainland on Loganair to visit universities. And on the way back, they weren't able to land in Benbechulan due to weather, sent back to Glasgow, and Loganair were trying to put them up in hotels, as is the norm. But because they were only 17, none of the hotels would take them. So they paid, as far as I understand it, full adult fare on the flight. Every other adult on the flight was accommodated. And this group of young adults was left scrabbling around at the airport, granted with the help of your customer service crew, but ultimately they did not have a solution for them, and it was left to family and friends to scrabble around to get these young adults accommodation for the night. So at the time we were told that they would raise it through internal channels to rectify that anomaly in the service that's offered, and I just wanted to check that has been rectified.
Thanks for letting me know about that situation. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar exactly with that scenario. However, please let me take that away, and I will check internally and come back to you about what's happened since that event. But yeah, I completely understand the seriousness of that situation. And your point is well heard as well around, they are paying adult fares. There's an anomaly with aviation versus hospitality there, clearly in recognition of adult versus children, but certainly, yeah, please let me take that one away. I will come back to you on that one.
That's lovely. If you just go through the chair, that would
Yes,
be perfect. Thank you very much for that.
Problem.
Francis, I saw your light on earlier. You wanted to come back, or maybe the question you were going to ask has already been asked?
Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee. I put my light off when I heard how long your queue was, because my point really was it wasn't a particularly new point, but it was about optics, and I think any organisation which has its heart allegedly in a community should perhaps have been a bit more careful on the optics of withdrawing flights here and announcing new flights elsewhere. I remember when Loganair took over the Glasgow-Stornoway route, coming onto the plane, and we had us tweed things on the back of the seats, thinking, oh, that's a nice gesture. It suggests being part of the community. And I fear, that becomes just so much window dressing if we cannot feel that we're being treated in the same with the same respect as a community as our others. I've listened to, I've listened to all the arguments. I just think the optics was very poor at this particular point, and I would suggest that that was something that should have been given further consideration. Thanks.
Yep, and as a reference previously, absolutely unfortunate timing. I absolutely hear the point that's been raised a couple of times around the optics of this. With regards to new routes, there is a lead time. These are programmed in. In fact, these were programmed in around February time this year. As I said, the discussions that we've been having around this particular route have been happening since December last year, and we thought that we would have them resolved before now, and when they weren't resolved, we were left with no choice but to take action on that, on this particular outcome. So I completely hear what you're saying. I just wanted to give a bit of background as to it wasn't an intentional thing to happen. It wasn't something that we pre-planned. But yeah, certainly I take on board, and I can see why that it looks like the way it does.
Okay, Councillor Mackenzie, I'll let you in first, seeing the others who are wanting to talk have already asked questions. So,
thank you, Chair. Just one question and one observation. Do you ever have the situation where where there's the two flights, a morning and afternoon, where you see that there's only a few on either flight and you cancel one of the flights over to the first one? That's a question. The other thing that I'm concerned about is when you're talking about SSCN, and that they obviously are going to take up a lot of the flights, that there will be sufficient flights for the local public, So we've got the two extremes there. One where you've got a partially empty plane and you cancel it, or may, and then you've got the situation where SSCN might be taking up the whole plane.
Yep. Okay, so to address the first point, I think certainly in this current financial environment that we're in, then it's absolutely right that we, as a commercial entity, will look at the products that are offered in the marketplace, and we will review demand for particular flights, and where possible, and I stress here, this is well in advance. This is not something that we sit here today and say tomorrow we're combining two flights. That's not how this works. There is times where we look at flights further forward and we can see that there is no demand for them whatsoever. Then it's absolutely, from a financial sustainability point of view, there's no point in us sending aircraft up that do not have any or make any contribution. So therefore, we are better to remove that from the schedule. That's on a very ad hoc basis that we would do this, and we tend to do this more than a month in advance where we can. This is, as I say, I just want to stress, this is not something that we decide, we have a look at it in the morning and decide in the afternoon that we're going to cancel and combine flights. That's not how it works. It is very much about how do we commercially plan and make sure that our operation is financially sustainable or commercially sustainable. So yes, we do, but as I say, hasten to add, not in the very short term. That's just, it's too disruptive for our customers, and it's not something that we would ever want to do. That may happen in terms of weather, possibly, or if we've got any other events going on, then that could happen. But certainly from a commercial planning point of view, absolutely, there's a lead time to us looking at when we alter services. On your second point, on SSEN, as I touched on earlier, know, we are absolutely focused on working, and I hasten that SSEN are actually extremely focused and engaged with us about how do they work with us on that planning side of things. They know themselves that they will have much more contractor or seat requirement than's actually available on the route, and that's what I'm saying around we will be looking at our fleet and our network plans in the future to balance their demand with what we can offer, as well as make sure that we can still run the services, the standard services that we operate at the moment. So we will look to, in the future, we will look at that whole capacity piece. But as I said earlier, we're very much looking at that right now. We are focused on what does the future capacity plan and fleet plan look like, and that's, and as a reference, new aircraft take time to come in, so we have to do that now if we want to bring bigger aircraft in for the, you know, for 18 months, 2 years down the line. So we are very much as a business looking at that seriously at the moment.
Duncan,
Well, thank you. Wait and see about that second one. I have to declare an interest here because I was in the situation where I was in an aircraft due to go out from Inverness at 8:30 in the morning, and it was cancelled because of possibly because of weather. It depends how you interpret that. So we eventually got out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the second plane, and people were saying there was quite just a few passengers, and they said, well, somebody said, I won't say who, that this is because there's only a few of us, so let's stick them on the afternoon plane. So that you've answered that one.
No.
But whose responsibility, and this was on this particular occasion, and no doubt, I thought it might be Highlands High, but I was told that it was Loganair's responsibility to service the ice, whatever you call it.
The de-icing.
Yeah, for clearing the runway. And this had broken down, and they eventually had to get in a local, I don't know, whatever he was, engineer, to fix it. So that was the reason I was told that it was, the plane was cancelled in the morning. So is it Loganair's responsibility to make sure that the ice machine or ice clearing machine is working?
So there's two parts to that. So in Stornoway, we have our own handling. It's Loganair handling team here, and they will be responsible for de-icing the aircraft. Eilean, the operator of the airport, are responsible for de-icing the runway and making sure the infrastructure is available at the actual airport. So if it's runway, you're saying, then that's down to the airport operator. That's their responsibility to de-ice. As I say, I'm not clear on the exact details of your circumstances, but certainly the airport infrastructure is managed by the airport themselves. Whereas our responsibility as here in Inverness, in Stornoway, is handling of the passengers, and I think we de-ice. We have a de-icing rig here in Stornoway for the purpose of de-icing the actual aircraft. But that's it. It does not go onto the runway and do any of that.
That's
for runway, yeah.
Duncan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon and Ronnie, for your presentation, which clearly today is very challenging in the circumstances that we are facing. And obviously, as an island community, connectivity is paramount for us, that we do get a service and it's affordable. And we see that with, we've got a National Islands Plan, and we've got an Islands Act, that should be looking at providing some protection to island communities. And looking at the two methods of travel we do have is ferries and planes. And as you rightly said, at the current moment in time, the way I see it is the only subsidy that is available to those living in the islands is the air discount scheme. And there's nothing to private operators, to reduce the cost of ferries. That's the cost of planes, but that's not, what is in ferry connectivity, because we've got the RET and CalMac are subsidised, albeit, that the private sector in ferries have shown that it can be done with Pentland ferries that operate without any subsidy between Orkney and the mainland. And they also are in a position that they're able to provide a ferry to CalMac, to subsidise the route. So the private sector can be, a model of doing things, in their own way. And we saw that with Taken Trader, that provided a freight service here when CalMac said it couldn't be done, and then CalMac have now provided a service. So looking at your situation, and particularly the Inverness situation, the first question I'd ask is, did you have any consultation with the community when you made the decision that that flight was going to run in the afternoon? That's the number one, because looking at it from the point of view, the people that in the public sector and the health board and the council are the ones that are paying the higher fares anyway, because the council and the health board can't claim air discount scheme. So it's bums and seats that that you're going to get the maximum return for. Now, looking at the public sector, by leaving Stornoway in the evening time, they're going to have an overnight accommodation in Inverness. And if you look online to try and get overnight accommodation in Inverness just now, probably you'll be lucky to get £200 bed and breakfast there. So that's an additional cost that's being added to the public sector. Whereas if that flight left early in the morning, some of the public sector there could be an option for them to leave early in the morning the way it was and return on the ferry that evening and not having that additional cost. So the Islands Act says if any change in circumstances have been introduced that will have a disproportionate impact on those living in islands, consideration should be given to that. So that's one of the things from a Scottish Government point of view that should add weight to that. There is additional cost in you making that decision to run. Now, that's what I'm asking, did you consult with the community? Was it a commercial decision for Loganair to decide for your operational circumstances to run that flight late rather than early?
I think, so, yeah, your point around the morning service, our discussions had been with Eilean the whole way through. And as I said earlier, we expected to have an outcome before this point in time. When the message had arrived to us that the funding wasn't there, we took the decision to take out that service and the subsequent Inverness, Kirkwall and Sunborough flight after it as well. It was our decision. We took that with and we notified all the key stakeholders. Well, before we removed the flight, we spoke to Eilean, we spoke to Transport Scotland, we wrote to all the MSPs, MPs, and then I spoke to the various NHS organisations as well. But it was very much it wasn't something that came into consultation from a public perspective for sure. It was very much this was a decision that based on the financial outcome that we'd received from our request for funding.
So you hadn't taken any cognizance of the impact that having a late flight rather than an early flight would have on the business or whoever used to do a day trip to Inverness.
I think it's
the additional costs that were there, because it's a cost to business, you see.
Yeah, no, and as I outlined in the presentation, it wasn't a decision that we we didn't just make the decision overnight. It was, we absolutely are aware what it means to the groups here. As I say, I sat and I spoke to the NHS organisations here in Orkney and Shetland, and got the immediate feedback, and that kind of leads me into your other point around the public sector costs, which again is formed part of Simon's discussions with the MPs and MSPs, that actually, the cost of funding from the Scottish Government on public service now significantly increases because, overnight stays are required. People are having to reroute, in the case of Shetland and Orkney, to other, to Aberdeen, to Edinburgh, to Glasgow. So that there's significant public sector costs there, and we fed that back, that very point back in to say, this will probably cost a lot more to the public than it would actually to fund Loganair to fly the route in the first place. But yeah, it's certainly something that we've raised and made the point as well.
That's certainly what Councillor Murray had raised earlier on about people being unaware of, a cheap option by phoning in, because friends of mine were in Glasgow and the option they had was fly from Glasgow at a very expensive rate back at short notice, and they had access to a bus that took them to Inverness, and then they flew from Inverness because that option, and they knew that option was available, and the option from Inverness was the cheapest option back home at a short notice than from Glasgow. So from a promotional point of view, I think if there are cheap alternatives, they should be available to everyone online and not just a select few that do know. You see that it is available. But looking at it from moving on to discussions with government, and what needs to be done is, we're an island community and we should be getting some discount other than air discount, which we've heard earlier on works, or probably works, if you do an early booking, but many people aren't in that fortunate position of knowing when they're going to be booking, so they're going to be at the tail end of the whole thing. So from the National Islands Plan, which we'll be discussing later on today, and the connectivity and the Islands Act, there is opportunity there for Scottish Government and National Government to have a look at what can be done and should be done to make life easier to remain and work and be able to communicate from islands to the mainland and come back at a reasonable cost, and not be forced in not taking that flight because of the cost of it.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, Angus.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here and being very patient in your answers. This is a very vexed issue with the people in the islands at the moment. They're very concerned about it. Even on my way here this morning, I was accosted by two people who had real concerns about the cost of flights from here, in addition, and were very concerned about the possible cancellation of a flight to Inverness. And they were making the point about, these variables in fares, which they really just didn't understand, and they thought it was dreadfully unfair. I agree with that, and I think that the principal purpose of your flights must be to serve the people in the islands. In addition to making, obviously, a business case, I understand that. And consequently, I think this business of variable fares for island people should just be stopped. And there should be a basic fare that island people can obtain. And that can be determined by knowing whether people are on the air discount scheme or not. That would seem to be a very fair way to go forward. And the SSSENs and all the other businesses that you use your aircraft, no doubt they will be trying to get you to do a deal with them. That deal should not impact upon us in the islands. If you can come to an agreement with them on something because of the number of times they'll use the aircraft or something of that nature, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I think you really, in your arguments with all organisations, government and the likes of SAN, SSEN and so on, should be about the number one priority being the local people and allowing them to move back and forward to the mainland. That is absolutely crucial. I had another example of a young man who wanted to come home for the weekend, and he was quoted a fare of £540, and so obviously he didn't come home. But he is a young man who is resident here, and he should have been able to come home with an ADS fare, but he couldn't do that. And I think that's something you may have to discuss that further with government in terms of how that operates. But I think the number one priority should be the people of the islands, and nobody else should be in that position. And just one other point I wanted to raise, a recent, and I know this doesn't happen too often, but recently my daughter travelled from Stornoway to Glasgow. She was flying on to Dublin. The flight was delayed by 4 hours. She eventually got to Glasgow. Now, most of the people on the flight were just going to Glasgow, but then, of course, she had missed her connecting flight, and I'm not aware that she got any assistance from anybody at all. She used her own initiative and found somewhere to stay and then booked another flight. I'm not aware that she's had any indication of compensation for that. There was no way that it was her fault, and a 4-hour delay is quite significant. I think it was an aircraft issue that caused it all. But do you not have some responsibility towards her?
Yeah, well, let me address that one first of all. So I guess, I mean, without knowing the exact circumstances, we do have partnerships with some airlines, and as I say, I don't have the details of your daughter's booking, but where we have a partnership with another airline and that ticket has been sold as a through ticket, then there is an obligation on Loganair to make sure you get that connection, and if the connection is missed, then the subsequent rebooking of the flight. If the circumstances are that there is 2 separate tickets involved, Loganair are not responsible for the connection. However, the delay is a different story. And again, I don't know the circumstances of the delay, but certainly where it's a delay that's caused by us, then we do have a responsibility for the flight, the point-to-point flight, if it's not a connecting flight. There's a lot of technicalities there, and there's a lot of various circumstances, but there is obligations in part depending on what those circumstances are.
Well, just to clarify the situation, she had made all the bookings herself,
yeah.
So it wasn't an interconnect.
So if it's separate ticket bookings, then Loganair would not be responsible for the connecting flight. It's the same as if you book a low cost carrier from Inverness to London, and then you've got another London to Barcelona flight. They're counted as 2 separate tickets. I mean, I'm getting very technical.
I know.
I
recognise that bit, but the reason she missed her flight was your fault.
No, and I appreciate that, and we would have, if the delay was controllable and it was our problem, then there is a responsibility for the point-to-point connection, but we would not be responsible for any further onward connectivity as part of that, because it is 2 separate. It's not a contract that's with us.
So it's not your fault, the fact that you missed her flight.
I never said it's not our fault. I mean, as I say, I don't know the circumstances of the original flight, so I can't comment even on that. But I mean, I'm just trying to lay out the scenarios that crop up here, and and this possibly gives an insight into the complexity of duties of care that airlines have, and the kind of compensation and financial responsibility that is far greater from an aviation point of view than if it was, a ferry caused a delayed ferry caused you to miss a connection somewhere else. There's no compensation. There's no obligation to carry that on. So I just really wanted to. Apologies, it goes into a lot of technical detail, but that is the complexity of the rules, and some of them are quite it can be quite damaging to the airline as well from a financial responsibility point of view, and in turn that drives up ticket prices as well. Not that I'm saying that's exactly the reason why pricing's high here, but it's another factor is disruption costs and obligations that are on airlines compared to other modes of transport drives further cost into our cost base. Do you want me to go back on the other quick, or do you want to?
No, I was just going to say I think I'm familiar with the case. I think we exchange emails, and I don't think we should in this committee maybe go into an individual case, but would happily come back on it again because we had quite a long exchange. So we will happily take that one offline, for want of a better word, if that's okay.
Okay, can you put off your light now, Angus? Yeah.
And then just to come back then on your pricing point, again, I think that's something that the wider discussion here around government funding and or just general funding, and your idea around how do we reduce variable pricing. I mean that's something that certainly has to be fed into this review option. We touched on ESO frameworks, but there's other frameworks that we can look at, and there's other funding mechanisms that could be put forward where prices are potentially guaranteed. I'm not saying this is a definitive thing. I'm just saying this is ideas that could happen from a funding perspective. So I think you're absolutely right. There's how do you protect the pricing from an on-island community point of view, but I think as well, we need to look at in the various points that's been raised from other people in the committee around bringing more people here as well from that are non-resident. So again, how can we support that through some kind of framework that helps alleviate the cost burden for us, but then allows some growth to happen in the marketplace as well, would be the solution that we would like to see as well, or just an idea for one of them. And then on your point on SSEN, I just kind of reiterate that point that we are working extremely closely with them. I'm absolutely hearing it loud and clear here as well that there's genuine concern about the capacity levels, the demand levels caused by them. What does that do to the pricing? And I can assure the committee that SSEN themselves are saying that to us as well. So they are very much aware of the role that they play, or they will have, or the influence they will have on this community. So it's very much loud and clear, and and as I say, a number of different discussions in the background with the various sub contractors as well as coming through SSE themselves as well. So there's a lot of discussion on this point, but I appreciate it. The committee raising it to us.
I think we need to move on. I've got a couple of people who have already spoken at length, so I will allow them in, but brevity is the order of the day, please.
Thank you very much. And I just want a quick point in your review, maybe. Will there be any scope for some organizational, maybe reform in terms of, if you're looking for our support with the government to, for more financial support from the government, which I think we should, is there a way in the benefit of transparency and assurance to the government that maybe some franchising of these island routes, or maybe a buffer to give assurances to Scottish government that the finance that they give you will be to support these routes, not to being, subsidize maybe English routes or other routes outside Scotland. So would that be something which will give assurances to the government? And I think to us that the money put in to support these routes will be spent on these routes.
Do you want to take that?
I think absolutely for this particular case, what we're talking about, the Inverness route, Inverness Stornoway, I think if there is a, as we discussed earlier on, if there is an uplift of money to bridge the gap, I'm sure government will impose very tight restrictions in terms of where we use that money and how it's used. And I think as Ronnie explained, is actually it will come through airport charges. So it won't be money that comes to us. So if it comes off, it will be a reduced cost to us.
Yeah.
So we won't see that money. But it will reduce the cost base and make the routes viable again. And the government, I'm sure, will impose some very strict conditions on how that money flows and where it goes.
I was just meaning as well in the general review
wider
of
sense,
ideas and everything.
And
if you look at all the island
Yeah.
routes, you know, Shetland, Orkney here.
And you know, I think in terms of what we spoke about, a wider strategy and a framework and a number of ways of supporting routes. And if the government does that, how they tend to do PSOs is route specific, as you have currently already on some of your routes on the Twin Otters. It is route specific, so it tends to be on a route that's non-viable. So the funding that arises for that, or the support that arises for that, is always ring fenced for the route. So it's not it will never be an overarching policy that says just protect all these routes and here's a ton of money. It will always be narrow and specific on routes that don't work commercially, because as we also touched on earlier, there are routes that work perfectly well commercially, and that should be left to market forces.
Right, final word for you, Councillor McNeill, something I do consistently.
You share, much appreciated. See when you get your flight to Inverness fully reinstated, can we have a look at the timetabling so that connecting flights from Benbecula and missing each other by 5 minutes and people miss their connecting flights? Because at the moment it doesn't work.
Yep, I mean, we can certainly look at that. I need to, as I touched on earlier, we are constrained by, in that particular route, by the fact it's one aircraft in Inverness, and we've got this route to do. They've got the Kirkwall and Sumbra route, and then an occasional Manchester in there as well. So, but certainly we will look at the schedules where we can and make the adjustments if we can possibly fit it all in and keep within the operating constraints of the various airports. But I appreciate you raising the point.
Can another we have question?
I have question.
You mentioned the Twin Otter service, whatever, and it serves Barra very well, but you'll also be aware there's no connection between Barra and Benbecula at the moment, and we previously used to have a service between Barra, Benbecula and Stornoway. Could anything be looked at if we're looking at PSOs and all this again to reinstating some kind of service? These lines, I know it's more cost than new routes, but if we're going to be looking at things, this is one of the things, because this got a major impact on people that are travelling for medical services, particularly to Inverness.
I think that's something that obviously the Twin Otter routes are under PSO and the aircraft ownership with or two of the aircraft with the Scottish Government. So I think that's probably something that we need to build into the next iteration of the PSO discussions, which are due, is that next year? Next year, I think it is. So
you'd be actually working on that just now then, if it's something that's going to be happening next year, or do you start to work next year?
Not yet. Not yet. Okay. So the tender process will begin at, I'm not sure when it will come out just yet, but it's not something that started yet. So, you know, we can feed that information in as well, if there's anything from the committee to add to it.
We did include it in the paper. Myself and the leader gave the Cabinet Secretary last week as well. We knew Councillor McNeill would be pushing hard on this, you know. Rightly so, of course.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Right, I think we can call it a day now. Gentlemen, I know it was a joke at 4 o'clock, but I thought we were heading there a wee while ago. But other questions, and we expect some responses back on. Yeah. So thank you again, gentlemen, very much, and appreciate your time.
Yep, and yeah, just to kind of close off by saying thank you for all your questions. Absolutely understand all the concern around the table, and just to completely reiterate, we are working extremely hard in the background here. I completely appreciate the points that around the optics of the move, but hopefully this has given you the understanding of where we're at as a business, and we are working extremely hard to try and rectify this as much as possible and restore the services that help this community or the communities here survive and thrive. So yeah, thank you for your time, and appreciate the chance to speak to you this morning.
I certainly appreciate you coming in person as well. So thank you very much. And I hope your flight in the afternoon's not delayed. Right, do you all want a tea break now, or are you happy to what? Well, if everyone's happy to continue, I know Colin and Norman are now experts on flights, so I'm the chief executive. Okay. Right, okay. Unless you want, yeah.
Take a 10-minute break or something. Yeah. Okay, just do that.
Right, we'll seeing Coleman and Norman in here, we'll have you report, which is item number 5, and then we'll have a 2-minute break after that. Okay, Stornoway Abattoir update. This report details the throughput and financial performance of Stornoway Abattoir for the 2025 operating season and 6 approval for the charges proposed for season 2026. I think you're going to speak to this first, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. So just to summarise, the abattoir is a non-statutory but important service supporting crofting and farming in the Outer Hebrides. It plays a key role in reducing transport distances for livestock, supporting animal welfare and helping sustain local food production. So the 2025 season performance, the abattoir opened from the 1st of September to the 19th December 2025, and it received very positive inspection reports from regulators. There was a drop in throughput compared to previous years, and it was 20% year on year down, and it's nearly 50% down since 2018. Likely reasons include rising costs, lower livestock numbers, higher market prices, and changing consumer demand. So the financial position, the income for 2025 was 104k against 179k needed to break even. This resulted in a 75k shortfall, demonstrating that the abattoir needs continued support. So there was external funding support. We had 57.5k from a Scottish Government grant, and we used 21.5k of Crown Estate funding, which the Comhairle had previously approved up to 50k. We also benefited from 15k shared prosperity funding used for new equipment, and a further 60k Crown Estate funding has been agreed for 26-27. So charges we're looking at for fees have increased 81% since 2018, whilst throughput has fallen significantly.
So it's proposed to reduce charges by 5% for 2026, returning to 2024 levels to encourage more use and test if throughput improves. So there's ongoing risks. There's continued decline in throughput, uncertainty over future grant funding, and there will be a need for future investment in the ageing facility. So the recommendations are there, noting the 2026 operation dates and approving the proposed reduced charges for 2026. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, convener.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Coleman and Norman, for this very comprehensive report. And I think we have to thank the Abattoir Member Officer Working Group as well, who put a lot of work into how to improve things at the Abattoir over the next year. Welcome the initiative to take the prices down for the killing fees, but I don't think it's going to make any difference. We have to be realistic here. The numbers are going down, and they're going down every year. Anyone who thinks that the numbers are going to double over the next, this season because the prices come down, it's not going to happen. We're nearly halved since 2018, and the numbers are going to carry on going down. You're not going to see any big difference. Maybe cattle, but not with sheep anyway, because they're just not there, and numbers are falling every year. People have to be a wee bit more realistic and in tune with what's happening. When you go back, 30 odd years, there was 15,000 sheep being killed in the abattoir here, 1,000 cattle. There's not 1,000 cattle in Lewis and Harris now, and 15,000 sheep, well, they're just not there to kill. So yeah, welcome the initiative, but I don't think it's going to make any difference. But thanks again for the report.
Gordon.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. Quite a bleak outlook from the convener, but I wanted to know, are there targets in throughput that would see the abattoir on a kind of sound financial footing for each category? And I suppose after this report, if the COLA agree, there will be a press statement about the prices to try and seek more support from the crofting or the community to support it. So are there particular numbers that would see the abattoir in a, because the alternative is probably far worse than having no abattoir. Thanks.
Colin, just
you.
keep your light on.
Thank you, Chair. We did do calculations on the numbers needed based on prices to achieve break even, and they're astronomical. I think we recognise that the service will always have to be subsidised. So there's the figures would be put the usage out of the equation, I think, if we charge realistic prices based on the numbers. And I recognise that throughput is falling, but if we're going to see if the reduction in prices will help reduce that decline.
Okay,
but
so
it'll always need subsidised, is the opinion.
What would be the alternative then for the abattoir if it's the case? Continue the subsidy and
it'll need to be subsidised through some mechanism. I mean, the Scottish Government funding from last year was welcomed, and there is strong indications that will be available this year. The added funding from the Crown Estate has also helped, but there is recognition that there is concerns and decisions that might not be continued in future years. So I think our opinion as officers is that the service will likely need to be subsidised to continue operating.
Okay, thank you. Callum. Oh, sorry. Callum.
Yes, I think we have to take a more optimistic view. I know there's a realism that the convener is on about. It is a realistic problem we've got in the whole of, but we've got that in the demographics of the island. We've got that with the island communities. If we sat down and we said, there is nothing we can do about it, we would just sit back and do nothing. Our population is aging, our young people are leaving, and that's a fact. And it's a fact that it's possibly seen the figures are actually reducing. But what we're trying to do here, as Colin is saying here, is we're trying to stabilize it. That is really what we're looking at, a stabilization for the moment. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know. People might really waken up and actually start buying lamb and mutton and start everybody's household. You never know. It'll be a change in eating habits. But the eating habits have changed. We're turning to more vegetarian. But these are cyclical. We can change as well. We can. And I think the more that we advertise the value of red meat, then I think that it could actually go up. But I still think that we need to have an optimistic. I agree entirely that it needs assistance. But as I said yesterday at a committee, I see fishing and aquaculture. You see how much money is being ploughed into that from all the grants. If we added all that up, it far, far exceeds what's going into crofting. Now, if we're serious about our communities and our crofting communities, we'll do as much as we can to help them. And this is minuscule. When I look at what the improvements in harbours, I'm sure Cala would tell us of just like that, the many millions that are going every year into harbours and the upkeep of harbours and such on and so forth. It's insignificant what we're putting in if we're putting in 25, 30, 50, even 100,000 into the abattoir, into crofting. So I would say it's to maintain at a level we are and trying to assist. And that's what I would put it in. That is a way of life. Our crofting communities are a way of life. We could stop it and give up. Then what would happen? It would increase possibly home kill. Again, and the vet has met with the member officer working group, and it would be good actually to get him in here and actually to speak to all the members and see the dangers of home kill, real dangers, and the pros of the abattoir. And I think that if we can do as much as we can, I would say that this should go ahead. And we should look at that even on a 3-year level or a 5-year level for sustainability. Because another thing that it could do, if we look at it on a 3-year and say to do this, maybe then we could put more investment into the abattoir if it is needed. And it is needed. Outward works, we need to paint it up or whatever. So I think we should be looking more at that as a Comhairle. And saying to ourselves, we're going to start helping crofting. So I would say to us, this is a good report, well done, and I think it's onwards and upwards.
Here you are, Colm. You've had the pessimist and the optimist. Yeah. Kenneth, which are you? Paul, can you put that?
Yeah, sorry.
At the risk of upsetting a fellow McLean, I'm not a pessimist. How many hours did we discuss issues in schools yesterday, crumbling schools? Each year we increase rates, charges for care homes. Every aspect of the council we're cutting, yet this one area we seem to be ploughing more and more money in each time. It's public money. No other community, as far as I can tell, in the rest of the UK, farming communities where it's crofting is as much part of our culture in Barra and Uist and all the rest of it, and the Highlands and farming communities all the way down to the south of England. As far as I can tell, we're the only state-run abattoir. I just don't understand why a non-statutory commercial venture that has been shown to fail time and time again is to receive yet more taxpayers' money. Why is it unique to here? You know, if home killing is so dangerous, it's dangerous in the Highlands as well then. It's dangerous in Barra, it's dangerous in Uist, it's dangerous in Orkney, Shetland, the south of England, all the rest of it. Why is it has to be protected for this one community? I just don't understand the logic of, you know, we sit here and look at crumbling schools, but then we go, oh, well, but we've got to keep the abattoir running. It's just, I don't know, it just confuses me. I know that's not really a question.
No,
it's more just a general.
You've made your point, so you're the cynic then. Yeah. Right, Paul.
Yeah. Just my understanding is, I'm not certain if it's correct, but my understanding is that the Barra, the Euston abattoir is self-funding. It doesn't get a grant. Is that the case? Or is there one even? I thought there was.
Well, the one in Lochmarlie doesn't get a grant, but it functions, you know, and
Yeah.
the operator, myself and Mustafa and talked to him, and he seems quite happy to carry on the way he is at the moment, I think.
So, I mean, did the Mail speak to these the Lochmarlie abattoir and to look at the model of how they've managed to survive?
I think it's in my intention, along with Councillor McNeill, we had discussed when I'm next in Barra to go and see the operator in Barra.
Yeah.
But if I can put it kindly, the operator in Lochmarlie would rather having less interference, I think. He likes dealing with the situation as it is himself.
Right, yeah.
So he's quite happy with that. So I'm not going to interfere.
No, it was really okay. But was there any discussion with any of these other abattoirs?
With
any other abattoirs? Was there any discussion about the model that they use that they're not
Well, I mean, we've discussed it with Lochmarlie, obviously. Yeah. You know, we know what model they use, but they want no interference from elected members or anybody else.
Oh, no, not asking for that. Just asking to discuss it with them once they wanted to interfere. The other thing I was going to say is that there's also, the way I see it as well, there's also a responsibility on crofters that, you know, to organise themselves to partly help this in terms of setting up marketing organisation to actually try and market what you actually produce. There's, you know, it's not just reliant on the abattoir here to just keep going and keep going. If you really want it to survive, crofters as an organisation have to get together and actually try and help to drive that. And I don't see any evidence of that. I know in the past there has been, and they've been seen not to work, but I don't see any evidence of it in the present. So I'm just wondering if has any been discussion among the crofting community themselves about how they can actually help to take that forward?
It's been tried in the past. I know
it's been tried in the past, yeah.
Yeah.
There is such a group as the Lewis and Harris Sheep Producers Association. We've been discussing with the people that are running that. They're doing the other one is the Mart. So there's discussions with some of these members as well. So they're doing a fair bit, but it's up to really retailers as well to same as in the aquaculture. It's the people produce it, but it's those who sell it that are the ones that are to advertise it, you know. But crofting has got the Crofting Federation is another group as well. So there is quite a number of groups that are.
Right, Duncan, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of observations, you know. It's clear that throughput through the abattoir is reducing and looking likely to carry on reducing. But are the what I'd call them exports and lamb sales to the mainland, are they likely to be increasing over coming years? And the other thing is, how are we comparing in prices to Dingwall, for example, that is the closest to us? And just with reference to what Councillor MacLean did say to, you know, the aquaculture sector and the fisheries sector, you know, there's processors in Lewis, in Harris, and in Benbecula and in Barra that add value to the product that is being done and added value done. They don't get any money from the public sector or from the council, you know, to add that value to their product. And when we look at aquaculture, it's all going away to the mainland, being shipped out now. There's no jobs really in salmon farming, you know, that's adding any value or producing anything on shore since Marybank closed. So one has to take cognizance of the importance of aquaculture and fishing to the communities, and that's available annually with the figures that are landed, and it's been increasing significantly, you know, the landings into the Western Isles over previous years, and the value of aquaculture and salmon. So I mean, that's readily available to anyone, you know, to have a look at. And from a public sector point of view, the Scottish Government that put any additional funding in, and the money that did come into the abattoir came from European money that did come to the council, the Shared Prosperity Fund, and the fishing industry and other industries benefited from that, as did the aquaculture sector, the abattoir. But I think as a community, we have to have a look, you know, that there are traditions that have been taking place and should continue if at all possible, but that you know, we look at whether additional funding can come from Scottish Government, which it did do last year, and reduce any additional burdens to the council, and whether, you know, the throughput, if the throughput carries on reducing, Callum, you know, it'll close itself. That's the biggest challenge, you know, on the actual cost to the number of the production that goes through it. And finally, I don't know, did the member office or working group look at alternative uses? We did consider deer, for example, and the number of deer that's being killed, and whether any added benefit could come to the community from having a look at deer being some other species that would go through the abattoir.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll probably come back to that one, touch on a couple of points raised earlier about the kind of the cost, and you've got the used abattoir and the Barra abattoir privately operated. The Comhairle have tried to get private interest in the abattoir to take it over, but there's been limited interest. So we recognise that operating it as a council is always going to be more expensive than private operators, and it is a large infrastructure to maintain. The throughput is also going to be affected by sale prices. They have been significantly higher over the last period, and I think they're projected to be quite high this year, which will affect throughput again. We have compared prices in Dingwall previously, but we are higher, but there's different dynamics. We're fixed prices. Some of these private abattoirs can have more dynamic prices, similar to the aircraft discussion earlier. We've got kind of additional kind of requesting for funding from the Scottish Government for that grant. Whether that can be increased or not, I think it's mentioned in the National Islands Plan. So if there's any further leverage we can use there to increase funding. But it is, I mean, our intention, our aim would be if some private operator wanted to take it over, we would assist them in any way.
Yeah.
I think there are what the fishing and aquaculture groups have been doing is actually I see what Duncan is saying there in one sense, but there's funding. Likes of Arbenish Harbour yesterday. I don't know how many millions went down to the harbours, but it's fisheries. Yes.
Sorry, with all due respect, Arbenish is not a fishery pier, you know. Yeah. It's being used by commercial operators that come in and out of Barra and pay for.
Yes, but you're still helping that. You still the grant element is going to the harbour. What I'm saying is that we've done that for fishing. I don't know how much has been done for aquaculture, but aquaculture was mentioned yesterday in the funding, and but what I'm saying is that we have to look at crofting, and the abattoirs are central to crofting, and that's what I'm saying, that we should be helping in some way or other. I fully realise that everything, if you stop buying fish, you're going to stop. The fishing industry is going to stop. If you stop buying meat, then the abattoir is going to close. These are logical conclusions we can come to, but at the present time, I think there's still a little bit of hope for crofting in Lewis and Harris and Southern Isles.
Euston Barra, please. Right. Do members agree? Oh, right, sorry. I don't want this to be as long as the Loganair. Right, who is next? Ian Archie's next. Susan.
Thank you. It's been mentioned about other commercial operators who could possibly take over the abattoir and run it, but has there been any discussions with the people who use it, running it as a cooperative, since they are the ones who benefit from it?
Colin, there you are.
Thank you, Chair. It has been discussed in the past. I mean, I think that's what the previous model was kind of based on, but there's been nothing tangible that we've been able to take forward. There has been some other interest in it, but again, nothing tangible that's been able to be taken forward. I think that there is recognition. I mean, with the size of it, whether it can operate commercially, given the size and scale and the throughput numbers, is probably a concern as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Shan. And in replying to the Susan and others who have asked about commercial operators, this was looked at 24 years ago when the previous operator went into receivership, and the local group who were looking at taking over the running of the abattoir made a strong business case, had a business plan in place, and there was still, the throughput was probably 4 times or 5 times more than it is now, and they were still going to make an annual loss. So there's going to be no local group who are going to take it on. It's either the Comhairle or no one.
That's fairly clear. Ian Archie, I would prefer you asked your question.
Fine,
You're quite happy.
I'm not happy, but I'm not saying anything.
Angus.
Thank you, Chair. And as a member of the Member Officer Working Group, I must say this is a really good Member Officer Working Group. We met regularly. We teased out a lot of the problems that we have had here over the years. And the issue that we do seem to have is we're recognised by Quality Meat Scotland as having one of the best abattoirs in Scotland. And that's come out in their audit. And that's a compliment to Colin and Ian Norman and the team. If it wasn't for the way the abattoir has worked through Ian Norman's team with municipal services staff, the cost would be a lot higher. And we've got to commend Ian Norman for that. You know, he's done a tremendous bit of work in this. One of the questions we did ask, though, was a breakdown of sheep numbers, cattle numbers and pigs right across every ward area in Luce and Harris.
Mm-hmm.
I was pleasantly surprised to see the number that came in from my own area, the Lochs area. It was a lot higher than I thought, but very disappointed the numbers that came in other areas, particularly areas of the island where there are huge sheep numbers. And I said at a year just now when we discussed this report that if crofters don't use this facility, we are going to lose it.
Yeah.
It's up to the crofters to support this. The crofters that have big numbers of sheep and cattle who are not supporting it, we need to ask them why. We've reduced the cost to give them the benefit advantage, but my fear is that we've only taken this back down to the level of last year's costs. And we're going to end up in a similar situation when we review the accounts again. We're going to be running at a loss again. It's difficult, but if they don't use it, what can you do? We're finally from butchers. One of the themes that came out from the butchers, or the chair of the Member Officer Working Group had a discussion with the butchers. They're actually selling less red meat, and a lot of them now go into chicken and various ready meals that they're producing. So we're basically, and the other thing I came out to was the meat that's coming from Monroe's or Dingle supplying the butchers at the moment, the choice cut meats that are coming. The likes of your flanks and various bits, people don't want to use them now. So we are, you know, the trajectory we're going down is going down the wrong road here. We're trying to keep something open that for the crofters, for the residents of the islands, and if they're not supporting it, where can we go? Private operators don't want to take it on. We had Heather Isle Meats come in a few years ago as an entity to try and support the abattoir and local kill. That didn't work either. But one of the cost elements from the audit that came out and from the accounts that came out that I think we should examine closely, I know Colin and the team have been looking at it, is our rates for the abattoir. are extremely high. If the rates were reduced, we would probably open up on a balanced budget at the end of it. So we need to do, if we can do something with the rates, get rate relief for the abattoir going forward, to be a tremendous help.
Are we able to do anything on rates then, Colin?
Thanks, Chair. We've been in discussion with the assessors, and we did kind of put an appeal in. It's not a formal appeal. I think there is another process we can go through, but the decision that came back is that the rates stand as they are. So we can take it one step further, but the reasoning behind why the rates apply seem pretty robust, so it's unlikely we'll get a reduction through that method.
I mean, the Ahmadi abattoir slaughterhouse tells me if the lamb or sheep had 14 legs and hundreds of ribs, they do all right. It's the less, it's the cuts that people don't want are the problem. I think you'd probably find the same, Colin.
The fact that the rates are high, I agree with what Angus says there, is a problem. It is a problem. It's a cost. It's a high cost, but that cost is going back into the council. Remember, so you're really you're paying back into the council for the rates. So that's, I know it's.
Final word, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. We can kind of have a look further at the rates if there's any kind of internal mechanisms. Sorry, but I think that the risk there is if there's any mechanism applied to this facility, then it would necessarily have to apply to other facilities or council premises. So I think we tried it through the assessors. We can certainly take that one step further, but I wouldn't be hopeful of the outcome.
Sorry, don't want me to speak?
No, speak. You weren't in at the start of the discussion, so yeah.
I'm still a member of the officer member group, and I think no, I think one of the distinction that has to be taken in consideration as well, to be fair to the abattoir here, is the costs are higher because the staff employed in the abattoir are Comhairle staff, and their terms and conditions are higher than what we employ in Lochmadi or the private employer can deliver in. So it's not a direct comparison, so to speak. So I think, that that's need to be taken into consideration, that the abattoir is employing people. Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, the stock held by crofters has obviously, going by what the convener said, has fallen dramatically. I mean, at one time, a crofter wore a boiler suit and wellies, and now they're wearing cravats and smoking jackets. So I'm just wondering.
Does he spend his life?
That's it. You're Rupert. But I'm just wondering, have we worked out how many sheep or cattle are held by in each croft? Has that dropped, and how can we increase it again so that the throughput on the abattoir will eventually increase it? Just looking at things from a different angle, as it were.
Very different.
Just seen Paul there having a wee puff.
Your light's not on, is it, Donald? No. Right, that was an interesting twist to crofting, in a way. They must all live in back then, all. Can we agree the recommendations at 3.1? Yes? Yeah? Okay. I think we'll have a short break. Yeah.
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
10 minutes at the most. Right, you can leave for 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back for hopefully a very short session. Right, item 6, road safety speed limits. This report seeks approval to progress the implementation of reduced speed limit areas and route reviews. Callum Mackenzie will speak to the report and answer any questions. Callum.
Thank you, Chair. There are a number of initiatives covered here. First of all, the implementation of 20-mile-an-hour zones. We've undertaken a number of them that are mentioned in the report. Part of Stornoway, Castle Bay, Ballavanig. Our next one on the list there is Tarbert. And if you look at the Appendix 1 to the report, it shows that we're not just looking at the 20-mile-an-hour zone in the Tarbert Centre, so to speak. We're also looking at 40 and 30 buffer zones from the west, south, and east of Tarbert. Looking at further implementation of 20-mile-an-hour zones in Stornoway, which is more the industrial side of the town. And also when we're looking at 20-mile-an-hour, is looking at the potential impacts of construction traffic on East Street. So that's detailed in Appendix 2 to the report. So it'll cover East Street and it'll cover the road down to the Eilean Monument. Further in Appendix 3 as well, you'll see the proposal to put a temporary 30-mile-an-hour limit in relation to construction activity for the HVDC site. Sorry, I've jumped one. Appendix 3 is on the Point Road to cover the development at the airport, and another 30-mile-an-hour temporary limit covering the HVDC site construction on the A859 Lochs Road. I'm aware that there are lots of other areas that are looking for speed limit reviews, and the intention is to follow the same principle as we've done around the Tarbert area here and look at a route-based proposal. So examples of that would be looking from Ness to Barras, and then instead of looking at individual villages, and there is some discrepancy when you look at individual villages across the Western Isles, where there are 40s, where there are 60s. It's about looking at these routes and undertaking an assessment on that basis. We're looking to develop that over the next couple of years rather than saying, okay, we're going to have everything done within a specific time period. There's an update as well in the report on the consultation the Scottish Government did through Traffic Scotland on reducing 60s to 50s, which they've no longer decided to proceed with. However, the speed limit for HGVs on single carriageways will increase from 40 to 50. So happy to take any questions in any aspects of the report.
Right, Paul.
Thanks, Chair. Just to ask Carol on Tarbert route, what does he mean by temporary?
We are looking at temporary traffic regulation orders for the reason that they're quicker to implement. Being temporary, they'll be time limited for 18 months. So during that time period, we can review the success or any other implications of that implementation. So it's a process that the other local authorities have used, promoted through Transport Scotland as a means of accelerating the 20-mile-an-hour implementation.
Okay, anybody else? I can. Who's first? Yeah, Gordon.
Just very quickly, just thank Mr Mackenzie for that proposed 30-mile per hour speed limit on Marybank. I think it's always an issue because there's quite a lot of trucks anyway going up and down that at 40 miles per hour on the pavement. It's a bit precarious, especially for people with buggies. So that'll make a bit of a difference. So and it was raised with me as well. So thanks a lot.
Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, Dalborough has been raised with me recently as well, so I'm sure that'll be included through the housing scheme and also down past the school. But my question was more to do with the Community Safety Board and the links with Police Scotland. You know, it's all very well changing the speed limits, but if there's no enforcement or limited enforcement, I think that's something that's come forward at community councils. You know, there are areas where there are lower speed limits, but it's not affecting the driving. So I suppose it's just an engagement with Police Scotland on that matter.
We do engage with Police Scotland on these at a national basis. With the implementation of 20s, Police Scotland have made their reservations on that in their lack of resource to enforce the extended 20s. But they have, as we've been implementing them, they have been stopping drivers within these zones and putting out warnings. Jeez.
Duncan. Yeah, just on the enforcement side, they are enforcing the new 20 miles around the schools, because they were enforcing Comhairle Road as I came in down there this morning and the camera was on me, so I don't know where anyone else travelling down Comhairle Road, but they were there. One thing on enforcing, you touched on, you know, we're not discussing it at the moment, is Point Street, and you know, it's within transport really, that they did say that in one day they issued three penalties or fined 3 people, and I thought it was higher than £100, but it's £100 fine that seems to be there. But on Point Street, you know, I think they have to tighten up on enforcement in Point Street in particular during the summer months, when, you know, an accident will happen unless they start enforcing there.
Angus.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of points. The first one is with due to speed limits and speed regulations. I know I approached before the bit of road between Laxey and the 2 churches before you to extend the current speed limit up to that area. It would be good to try and do something with that, Colin, because it is beginning to be a problem. We've got 2 churches and 2 houses there, and the traffic speed coming out from 140 to another. And that's a problem we're going to have here. You're going to find people speeding out of these 20s when they can into other areas. And there's a current issue that we can see in the Lochs area. So I'd like that to be brought higher up on the agenda as one item. The other one is recommendation 3.1D, the implementation of a temporary 30-mile speed limit to cover the construction rate activity on the 859. I believe that we're in discussion with the developer as well about further road calming measures for that area. Could we build something into that recommendation to cover it, to say the implementation of a temporary 30-mile per hour limit to cover the construction along with other road calming measures as agreed between the department and the developer? Because it's going to be a real concern, that stretch of road, and we've highlighted this before. And Councillor Mackenzie and I have spoken to the developers, and they've come up with a few proposals which they're in discussion with yourselves with. It's just to see how we don't lose sight of that with this recommendation.
On your initial one regarding Laxey, we're getting that kind of pressure from lots of wards, and that's why I'm saying we'll look at things on a route-based basis. So not looking at specifics, but the specifics will be covered if we look at, for instance, Cumberland Terrace to Tarbert. Look at that as a route, and making sure that there's consistent approach in all areas, which will capture these.
Okay.
In relation to the recommendations here, this recommendation puts us on control to actually apply for the traffic regulation order. To put something else onto it that we maybe not be in so much control of, it may be covered under the planning conditions. So we are working with Morag on the planning conditions for the HVDC in 2 phases, which are covering these additional measures as well. I probably don't see any harm in putting something in there, but
I think I would like to see something in just so we don't lose sight. I know planning, and I know, and I am aware of what the discussions are. So is my colleague, but I would like to see something built in there, to, just to cover it before we do lose sight of it. I know it's a road, there's a speed limit, but it is an area of real concern, that road, given the amount of development that is going to take place there.
I don't have any objections to adding in conjunction with agreed road safety measures with developers.
Yeah, I would appreciate that could be done. Yeah.
Okay, you can put your light off, Angus, please. Thank you. All. And then you, Kenya, don't worry. You're
Sorry, Chairman. I didn't want to. I thought Kenneth was before me. I don't want to prolong the meeting much further, but my colleagues and I have raised concerns about traffic management issues at Tongue School numerous occasions, and indeed the parent council has as well. And you've met with them in the past, Mr. Mackenzie, and they've corresponded with you, and they're still to receive a response to that. So I'd be grateful if you could get back to them and reassure them about what action is going to be taken.
That matter is sitting with the Chief Officer for Education, who said he was dealing with that matter.
Okay,
Because I'm aware of the correspondence. There was a permanent 20-mile-an-hour limit there in the past. When the temporary lights came out at schools, that was viewed preferable because it actually gave you the warning when the school was in. We've looked at them to extend the times at the times that suited them, and there was also the question of putting in a pedestrian crossing.
Yes.
Now, the correspondence in relation to that is currently sitting with ourselves. So it's a matter that myself and the Chief Officer of Education will respond to. But
I'd be grateful if you could. Thank you, and I'll follow it up soon too. Thank you for your indulgence, Chair.
Kenya. Kenya.
Thanks for that, Chair. Yeah, just to what Paul said, and a big thank you for Callum and his team for the work in and around Tarbert there. It's I know it was there long before I started, and certainly since I started, it's been one of the main issues, and it's been coming in for years. So it's great to see that finally coming to fruition. On just as an aside, at the recent Community Safety Board meeting, we had a new police inspector there, and he advises that there was going to be an increase in traffic enforcement. We're certainly going to be ramping it up, and he was looking at bringing in other measures as well. He had some concerns with speeds and traffic behaviour, and he was certainly looking to action that as well. So, yeah, it's positive.
Okay, Mustafa, you can put your light on now.
Thank you very much. Just the road from Clachan to Behead, the A65, it's a 60 miles an hour, and it's a narrow old road, but there is more traffic in the moment, especially going to the shop, going to Solace, the big trucks when they deliver and they're going at the speed. You're passing, there is a nursery, there is a cafe, and I think that really, we had an accident a few weeks ago. That road should at least go down to a 40. When you see huge Arctics full of load going, doing deliveries and going at 60 miles an hour because they're allowed to do it, it's really dangerous. And the other things, as we talked before, was some traffic calming measures outside the co-op and Bayhead shop. There's a lot of cars in and out going to the shop, to the co-op, and other cars coming at 60 miles an hour. So I think if something need to do to reduce the speed there, just if we can. So just thank you.
I'm aware of all that's why I was making the general point that every member in their ward will have some examples of where they want speed limits reduced, and looking at on a consistent route based basis is what we're looking at doing. HGV should not be travelling
at 60 mile an hour.
Yeah,
They're not
that's-
permitted to do that. So again, a matter of enforcement. We have put additional signage at the Clachan stores there.
Yeah. I mean, the speed there, it's especially, there is a few blind summit on the road, and even just normal cars going at that speed is absolutely, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Callum.
Thanks, Chair. I was asking to a preliminary, and then I'll ask the question. The preliminary, first of all, is well, it's a question. Is really is on the road down to Stonyfield Farm. I see you've got a 20 mile per hour speed limit. What's the reasoning behind a tractor going very fast down that road? What's the reasoning behind? I'm just asking that as a preliminary to my next question.
There's heavy. Well, there's heavy vehicles going down to the service of water plant. A lot of people walk down the road to go to the monument.
Yeah.
And it's a narrow road. So
I understand. I quite agree with you entirely. But putting it there, my next question is what criteria you're using? And you mentioned route based, and I agree. You have to have some criteria. What criteria would you use for? And you would do that for, especially with schools as well. If we talked about the Tongue School and other schools to reduce the speed limit, what criteria would you be using?
So at a school?
No, in any road that you want to reduce. For instance, I'm going to ask you, what I'm going to ask you is that there's a road in my ward which is 60 miles per hour. And it's a very dangerous road because it goes right past a sports centre, where a very heavily used sports centre, Mondays, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Friday nights in the summertime. And it's a 60 mile per hour speed limit, 60 mile hour. So cars are rattling down that road. As a matter of fact, I was speaking to the police yesterday, and the police are enforcing it. They're actually there. They've been there for the last 2 nights, and they're already charged quite a few people. So their presence there is good. But they themselves said as well that it's a very fast road. And I've asked for time and time. We've talked this in our colleagues as well. From the ward, we've talked about this. This area of road is highly dangerous. Already, we've had a few years ago a young child being knocked down on that road because there's a sports centre right beside it. So I'm saying that it's route based. Would you agree? So the criteria there is ideal for a reduction from a 60 to 40.
Well, there is national criteria that's used for assessing speed limits. So yes, it's the number of frontages, the number of properties facing onto the road. So what I would like to do is take this consistent approach. But as I said earlier, all members within their wards will have examples of where they're saying that speed limits are too high, and we want to do that on a consistent basis.
So I'll be in your office tomorrow making this up. A number one priority.
You can form a queue, an orderly queue.
Right, Francis online. You've been waiting a while.
That's okay. Thanks very much for letting me in, Chair and other member of the committee. I do think there has been a perceptible difference on Goat Hill Road since the 20 mile an hour came in. I have seen it being enforced, so that's all very positive. The one thing I wondered about was, I believe there can be a lag between a change in a temporary change and the displays in cars, dash displays, because I have noticed that myself going down Smith Avenue. That still says 30 and it's a 20 mile, and I don't know, is there anything that can be done to update these things? I know it's done from a variety of data, but it can be a wee bit confusing for drivers. I suppose they should always look at the sign on the road rather than what's on their dash cams. That would be the advice. But I think there are still signs saying 30 in the temporary 20 areas, which is confusing, I think. Thanks.
There shouldn't be signs within the 20s that are saying 30s. If there are, I'll certainly look into that. But the signage was all changed to suit. I believe vehicles pick up on the signage. So if you're driving your vehicle, it's your vehicle that picks up passing a sign. So it should pick up passing the 20 sign. And then it's the AI within that individual vehicle that then pops up in your dashboard. So it's not something that we need to change there. The vehicle should pick up the sign. But I will check, just double check that there are no 30s within that area.
Francis, are you happy with that response?
Just have a wee look on Smith Avenue, and there definitely does seem to have been a lag on the vehicle, because the vehicle information is still saying 30, so it's getting that from somewhere. So I know it is a variety of data it takes in. I kind of had a wee look into that, because there is a discrepancy. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. George. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Mackenzie. Really really welcome the 20-mile-an-hour limit on East Street. Really needed. Narrow bit of road, as we all know, and heavily used. Another little piece of road which is widely abused. The speed limit is widely abused, is from the airport to the A866. Widely abused, and I get constant phone calls about it from concerned constituents on the Branagh stretch. Now, the developer down there at Branagh has offered to put in traffic calming measures free of charge. I think I told you about this before. Free of charge traffic calming measures, which would eradicate the problem completely and would stop necessitating police having to police it, really, if there was traffic calming there. And it'd be a freebie. Thanks, Chair.
There's a freebie for you, Colin.
As long as they comply with what should be on a 30-mile-an-hour road, I've no issue with that at all. So I'm aware of the proposals.
Yeah, and would you look on it favourably?
The proposals were going to be crossing points with narrowing, but we'll have to look at the specific places they were going to see what the impact was on driveways, etc. So in principle, we don't have an issue.
Okay, so do members agree the recommendations at 3.1 plus the additional?
Thank you, Chair. Could the clerk maybe read out what the additional wording is?
Yeah, she's got it all written here. I was coming to that, so please, no interruptions.
Okay, so the additional wording was in terms of 3.1D, and that is, as either in Appendix 4 to the report, in conjunction with agreed road safety measures with the developers of the HVDC.
Are we happy with that, or do you want it amended further?
Something. Could we put in and additional works as by the developer, and additional in there I think is missing, Shona. And
Sorry, say again, and additional works.
And any additional road calming measures as agreed by the developer.
Yeah, sure. Renewable developers. Yeah.
Yes.
Renewable developers. Okay.
Just to broaden it out past HVDC works,
You got that shown, are we happy?
Yes.
Yeah, we have to make sure Councillor Morrison's happy, yep. Right, so with that additional, our members happy to agree the recommendations at 3.1? Yeah, thank you. Next item is reports outstanding, and that is for noting, unless somebody's got a question. Okay, item 8. Oh,
Take us in school and schoolhouse. It's listed.
that's in surplus assets later on, is it not?
Sorry.
Keep up.
Yes. For Pete's sakes, hurry up then.
Right. So can we move on to item 8 now, Councillor McNeill? Yeah, okay. This report is for noting and provides an update on progress being made under the Outer Hebrides Local Transport Strategy. The strategy was introduced in 2020 and covers the period 2020 to 2030. This report reviews progress against the strategy themes at its midpoint. Now, Colin, you're going to speak to the report, but Linda's online. I hope she's still there anyway, to help you out if you get stuck.
Thank you, Chair. So, as we've heard, transport remains a lifeline service for the island, supporting access to essential services, economic activity and community sustainability. Progress at the strategy midpoint is kind of moving forward, but delivery continues to be heavily dependent on external funding and national policy support. So I'll just run through a few of the key highlights, but take obviously open to questions later on. So roads progress is constrained by funding, with although additional external funding has supported key projects. We've got active travel, there's good progress with that, supported by multiple funding streams, including 414k of active travel infrastructure fund. Ferries and ports, ongoing work to improve capacity, reliability and resilience, as we're all aware of that. We're looking to retain the road equivalent tariff. Aviation, we've obviously heavily discussed this morning, just in terms of the PSO the COLA provides. So we have got the new aircraft in place and is it out to tender for 2 additional days. There's continued focus on securing long-term funding and regulatory support for that. Public and community transport, so there's development of community transport initiatives, and you've got the £2 fare cap for the year pilot in the Highlands and Islands. We've got additional funding of about 1 million coming through the Transport for Employment programme to support access to jobs and services. So funding, it's clear that significant funding investment is required beyond current COLA resources to maintain and improve the network. So, but we are obviously reliant on external funding, innovation and island proofing funding streams to help move the strategy forward. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Colin, thank you. Do we have any questions for Colin on this? I hope it's not on aviation then, Kenneth. The leaders first, Colin.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just note in 6.2, ferries and ports covers the fixed links element. I'm just wondering, is it worth its own section rather than begin amongst ferries and ports? It's probably more linked to roads. Just a thought in terms of structure.
You hear that, Colin?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll have a look at it and see what it's sits in terms of the themes of the original strategy. But yeah.
Okay, Colin.
So just a quick question on e-methanol. I just it's just my ignorance on it, and there's probably something written somewhere about e-methanol. Could make the Outer Hebrides a key location for supply of feedstock into refine. I'm a wee bit. What does it? Could anyone tell me what e-methanol is?
There you are.
Where is it going to be? Where is it going to be produced? Sorry, Colin, for putting you in this, but this is my ignorance is.
I think it's one of the kind of developments coming off the renewables schemes. There is some at the Creed Park, but that's more hydrogen rather than e-methanol at this stage.
E-methanol. What's e-methanol anyway?
methanol-based fuel? Is it probably is he for environmentally produced? I'll let Calla answer this one.
I think Paul wants to answer it as well. Carla.
E-methanol just now is what they're using as a substitute for hydrogen. So if you're looking at if you're not producing hydrogen, you can use e-methanol to then convert within a generator that'll run on hydrogen.
I know what methane is, but e-methanol.
So it's manufactured down south of England, I believe. It can come up in a liquid or bulk form. It can then be used as a hydrogen substitute in fueling generators. And it was one of the proposals. You'll probably hear this afternoon at PNR a wee bit more about it in relation to some of the developers when they're say they're like the HVDC site, they can't get a grid supply for electricity. So they're going to have power generation on site for their site offices, etc. The same with the accommodation at Marybank. They can't get a grid connection. So instead of using traditional diesel generators, they're looking at hydrogen generators, which will run on e-methanol.
It's climate. It's obviously for the improvement of the climate.
It's alternative fuel source, yes.
Every day is a learning day, Callum. Did you want to add anything? I know it's coming up at your committee.
No, just to say that was going to come up later on. I was going to explain the process, but Calla did a very sterling job of doing it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Right, are we happy to note this report? Right, we will now conclude the meeting and go into private to consider item 9. The relevant officers and members of the committee should remain, and I will ask all other participants to please leave the meeting now.